Ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of prayer. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we do have a quorum tonight with 8 members present. I ask for approval of the agenda unless there are changes. Motion for approval.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the agenda is adopted. And I'll ask for disqualifications. In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every planning board member to avoid conflicts of interest. Does any planning board member have any known conflict of interest with respect to any matters coming before the planning board today? If so, please identify the conflict and refrain from any participation in the matter involved.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to mention again about PB 1518 Mashuda multifamily. This was a carryover from last month that's coming back up. Just wanted to mention that many of us were contacted by representatives for those folks there, and just wanted to let the public know that they did contact us, and we do not believe that it will impact our ability to have a clean vote on this particular item.
Correct. Yes. Thank you for the reminder. I talked to the applicant as well, and it has no bearing on how I vote either way. All right. Any other disqualifications? Okay. All right. All right. Tonight, being the first meeting of the year, it's election of officers. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Valova.
Thank you. I'd like to open the floor for nominations of chairman or a motion for chairman.
I'd like to nominate John Cooper as chairman again.
Okay. All those in favor of John Cooper being elected chairman, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. John, you are now
Thank you,
chairman
guys.
for
I
another
appreciate
year.
the vote of confidence. Thank you very much.
Now I'd like to open the floor for nominations or a motion for vice chairman.
Second.
All those in favor of Carol Bell being elected vice chairman, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Welcome back, Carol.
Thank you.
All right. Any changes to the minutes or a motion to adopt the minutes from the previous meeting?
I make a motion to adopt the minutes from the previous meeting.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? All right, motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, minutes are adopted. All right, Donna, how many use permits for swearing in do we have tonight?
One.
Just one? Okay. And that's PB 1523?
Yes.
All right. Before we get started, anyone who's going to speak in favor, against, speak in any way on item PB 1523, that's the Wild Ropes Adventure Park use permit, not the text amendment, but the use permit, please come up. I like to swear everyone in at the beginning of the meeting.
There.
No, right here. We're going to swear you in. All right, please place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. Thank you. Our first item of old business, the only item of old business tonight is PB 1518, Mashuda multifamily. It's a request for conditional rezoning of 15.78 acres from agricultural to conditional district mixed residential. Staff, who's presenting?
I will be presenting, although we made the presentation at last month's meeting, so I won't go through the complete staff report. I will share with you a couple of maps that were requested. One map has to do with the Maple Barco Small Area Plan future land use boundaries. Those are defined on the screen. The property is highlighted in this area right here and is found in the employment land use classification. And then we also have, as a request, the airport impact zones, and that's zones 1, 2, and 3. And you have before you, at your seat, all the requirements associated with each of those 3 zones. The property happens to be zone 3, which is right in this area. I also provided to you from the Institute of Government information related to spot zoning and how to address those issues should that need arise. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for staff?
I'd like to thank staff for providing the maps that we requested and all the data that goes along with the spot zoning issues as well. Thank you all for doing that.
Yes, indeed. All right, with no other questions from staff, we'll ask the applicant to come up and present the case. I'm not sure how many we have signed up to speak either for or against, but we are tonight on all cases. We're going to have a maximum of 20 minutes in support and in opposition for all cases with a 5-minute rebuttal period. All right. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Brian Innes. I reside at 136 Pat's Way in Barco. And I'd like to, ladies and gentlemen, like to thank you for this opportunity to present this project on behalf of my clients, Mr. and Miss Mashuda. If I may, I've put together some similar maps there, 1 or 2 that I'd like to pass out. There's a copy for everyone, if you could please, and I'll reference them as I go along. Thank you. Okay. I would like to just go over a very brief recap of what we discussed at the last meeting. Briefly, I and my company are agents for the owners, Mr. and Miss Mashuda. These folks have worked for the State Department for many years overseas, and they purchased this property as part of their retirement plan. As years passed, they applied for permission, which was granted, for a minor subdivision of 4 lots which exist today. However, when they moved back to the USA, their dream of making a major subdivision of 5 or more lots, which this would be, was not feasible, as the regulations which govern major subdivisions have changed significantly from the time that they had purchased the property. Only a few lots would be permitted. Open space requirements would play a major part, as well as requirements for the amenities which are now mandated. Whatever they could sell the lots for would probably be considerably less than what they would have in them. In the discussion about what the land could be used for, it was suggested that it could be an integral part of the entire commercial park which has just been built by our county. Homes for folks who will work in the complex, to say nothing of homes in a townhome setting for single folks, for young families in their first home, and for older folks who just want to downsize. These could be homes for so many people who already work in our county, our school teachers, police officers, government workers, etc., etc. Such a development has been sought after in the northern half of our county for much longer than we have been in business here, and that's close to 30 years. At this point, I would remind you of the letter from our superintendent of schools, and that is item 2 in the package which I handed out. in which he says, and I quote, "I am supportive of the townhome plan for Currituck County." One point which does bear repeating is that no incentives or grants are being pursued for this project that would allow it to be a rent subsidised or Section 8 complex. Let's briefly review the concerns about the projects. There was a concern about the ingress and egress to Route 158, already a busy road. DOT will undoubtedly require acceleration and deceleration lanes at Patriots Way, which can only assist the safety for everyone. Secondly, water pressure was a concern, and that would be increased. And in addition, all the homes proposed will be sprinkled. And then, thirdly, it was suggested this could be a haven for crime and criminals. I'll remind you of the letter from Sheriff Johnson, which is also in your package, item number 3, who talked of a similar group of homes in the south end of the county where, with proper management, there is no greater incidence of crime than there would be in any other part of our county. Consider also what benefit, if any, this project might be to the 3 homeowners who already live on Patriots Way. At this time, Patriots Way is a gravel road. If the project were permitted, it would have to be asphalted, and I've got a couple of pictures there, items 4 and 5, showing the difference, at least what it would look like from the road. There will be facilities available to the residents of the townhomes, such as the pond with fishing and barbecue stations, and these will be available to all who live in Patriots in Freedom Forest. The walk around the pond will be continuous with the walkway system which is proposed by the county for the area. These too will be available to all, and will provide walking and cycling access to the school, the playing fields, the Y, the extension centre. All residents, including their children, will have direct access to the facilities without having to be driven there on the busy 158. The folks at the front, if they wish, may well have the possibility of employment within easy walking distance of their home. Now, it was explained at the last meeting that for the project to be approved, a zoning change will be necessary from agriculture to mixed residential. It was also explained that the planning department cannot recommend approval because it is apparently contrary to the existing area plan. However, it was pointed out that such a plan is simply that, a plan or a guide, which if necessary can allow a variation to the benefit of the community. It was proposed that this project would definitely be to the benefit of the community. Also, it was pointed out that it lies within the airport overlay. In response, it should be pointed out that within the last few years, the following have been permitted within the airport overlay. The Y, the greatly expanded Sheriff's Office and Jail, the Extension Service Building, a campus of the College of the Albemarle, and a sports complex which is still growing. Each of these are much closer to the airport than this project, which is right at the very edge of the airport overlay. As you can see from the very first picture, number 1, where I've pointed out where exactly it lies in relation to all the other activities that go on within 1 square mile. Finally, the question was raised about how much a project would be spot zoning. And for that reason, the discussion was tabled to this evening. I understand that our planning department relies on this document, which has been provided me, on spot zoning, and which has been written by David Owens of the Institute for Government at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. In this document, Mr. Owens describes how the term spot zoning does not automatically cause a proposal to be denied. Rather, he explains that at some length, in some instances, the concept of spot zoning might be considered beneficial to a community and detrimental in others. I'm not a lawyer, but it did interest me to read the document such as this, where if you examine a topic, you'll find just as much information and opinion to support both sides of an argument. I was able to obtain an opinion on this project from Mr. Adam Lovelady, Assistant Professor of Public Law and Government at UNC in Mr. Owens' department. And the professor said, and I quote, and I have the email that I'd be happy to share, he said, "I can't say whether or not rezoning this property would amount to spot zoning, but it does appear that there's already a mix of uses in the vicinity of the site. Such a mix of uses would tend to indicate that rezoning is not unlawful spot zoning. Give you an example. An example of spot zoning might be one zone's type stuck right in the middle of a much larger area of another zoning type. In that case, please turn to page 6 of the little handout there. And there you can see the types of zoning within 1 square mile of this project. If you count them, there are already 5. Yes, 5 types of zoning: agriculture, general business, heavy industrial, single family, and yes, even mixed residential. The very zoning that's being requested. So I would suggest that this can hardly be spot zoning, since it is among many others, including the same zoning, only a few hundred yards to the east. Let's consider, however, that this does deserve the description of spot zoning. In Mr. Owen's document, an item entitled Factors in Validity, he poses some criteria for spot zoning. Example 1. Does the property have different physical characteristics, topography, or unique access to roads or utilities? The answer is no, since it not only blends into the area very well, but it will be left surrounded by a buffer of existing mature trees. And secondly, are there land uses on or in a proximity to the site that are different from the use made of most of the surrounding property? Well, the answer is definitely yes, of course. There are many different uses of the land in the area. However, less than a mile away to the west, there is a community where the existing residences are so close together that in today's jargon, it could easily be termed multiple family. Now, I'm not qualified to read you endless examples of why this may or may not be spot zoning. Suffice to say that the zoning that's requested will provide for something really positive for the area. Finally, the point was raised at our last meeting that such a project may be contrary to the Maple-Barco Small Area Plan that was prepared a few years ago and which incorporated a map of future land use. I'd like to quote this from the vision, and it's in your packet, number 7, which I have highlighted. I'd like to quote from the vision of that study, which describes one of the goals to be, and I quote, encouraging appropriate mixes of residential and commercial densities in close proximity to the airport facility. Finally, please turn to page 8 of the handout. This map is part of the Maple-Barco Small Area Plan, and the area in red, which is designated for mixed use, is literally only a few hundred yards from the site of the project. To summarise, the project as proposed will surely benefit the citizens of the county. It will extend the variety of housing in our county, which presently concentrates mainly at 2 extremes. At one extreme, there are mobile homes, and at the other extreme, there are medium to high-priced single-family homes. Last but not least, this will surely play an important part in assisting in the recruitment by our county of much-needed incoming businesses and industry. And I thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Ennis, I think I asked you this last time, but if you could refresh my memory. I don't think this is a project that you're planning to actually do, right? Is this a proposed project that someone else might do? Is that correct?
That is correct. It's on behalf of the client. I have a contractor's license, but I have no intention or ability to build something like this.
Sure.
And so if I can, on behalf of the client, get an approval for the project, then at the instruction of the client, the property will be put up for sale with the suggestion that, on the understanding that if whatever regulations or conditions are placed on its approval will be met by a prospective buyer.
Okay. These type of projects, they can go either individual ownership or they could go total ownership to where each building, the whole building is owned by one party and maybe each unit is rented. They can also have it to where each unit is set up townhouse style, condo style, so there's individual ownership. Has that been addressed at all?
Partly. To answer that question, the first concept was it would be apartments, and that, on second thoughts, was met after some opposition or some distress about it. It was decided to change the whole idea, the whole concept, to one of townhomes, and I should point out that the picture of a typical townhome or that style of building is included as part of the application. So therefore, if approved, the project will, I assume, have to match that pretty closely. And so for that reason, as townhomes, it can be, as you point out, it could be bought by an investor for a rental, can be bought by an individual as a home, or it could be bought by several people to rent out as a block or whatever.
Okay, thank you. All right, other questions for the applicant? Okay, all right, thank you, Mr. Ennis. All right, with that, we'll open up the public hearing, and I do not believe I have anyone signed up to speak for the public hearing. Is there anyone here that wants to speak? Come on. Did you sign up?
No, I didn't. I got
Okay,
late.
and that's fine. I just didn't know if I needed
Yeah,
to mark a
I
name
walked
off.
in when it was starting. So.
All right, name and address for the record.
My name's Rodney Young, and I live at 103 Patriot Way.
Okay,
I'm one of the 3 landowners there, and then there's another house that's for sale now.
okay,
And they're actually having a hard time trying to sell it because of this. And I feel that we're going to also have a hard time trying to sell ours if it gets approved. It's going to depreciate our value of our property. And it's also, to me, I believe it is going to be going to spot zoning because you're going against the area plan already. You're going against the airport overlay plan. And, you know, according to the density that's allowed there. And it also is going to, spot zoning also affects the surrounding area property is one of the considerations of spot zoning. And I got a list of some of the spot zoning effects that we'll have is lower income housing moving in is going to lower our value of our homes. It's going to create a high density in the area because of the airport overlay and higher density than what the actual Maple Barco small area plan allows. And it also, there's one more thing, I can't remember what it is, but that's basically all I got to say. I just think it's not a good thing. I do think it is spot zoning, and if it gets approved, I'll probably try to fight the spot zoning. So.
okay, thank you. Anyone else here that, please?
Hi, my name is Kathy Young. I also live at 103 Patriot Way. When we bought our property, it was understood that it was going to be our houses and then possibly 5 to 7 more houses in that area where they're proposed to do the townhomes / apartments. They had said that, you know, you want to believe that it's going to be, you know, higher class people, you know, good people, and you want to believe the good in everybody. But a lot of times that just doesn't happen. We have kids, our neighbors have grandkids that get home from the bus. They walk from the road because the bus does not come down our road. They get off at the highway, walk to the house. We are not home when they get home, whenever they get off the bus. So that's a considerable, you know, fear of us, of ours, because you see on TV all the time, people pick up kids, you know, all the time. You warn your kids, but you're never there for them. That's a big issue right there. Like he said also, the value of our house, because if that's going to be there, we're considering moving. The traffic is going to be horrendous. It doesn't matter how many lanes they put on the road, it's still going to be horrendous. We don't mind having a gravel road. We have a tractor. My husband maintains the road. He always has. It's no problem with our road. I just don't see it being feasible to do that at this time. There's no jobs available in that area at this time. I myself work in Chesapeake. I do that because I wanted to live in the country, and it is the country right now. Once you start doing that with that kind of housing, it's not going to be the country anymore. It's just going to be like a city, a little closed city. People have always driven, you know, to find jobs. If I wanted to find a job in the city, I would have moved to Chesapeake, apparently. But I just don't see, we have, like he said, we have a house next door. He had once said the last meeting, there's no place for people to live. I myself, I rode around these past 2 weeks and month, and I've seen a lot of houses for sale. They even have a house for rent across the street from Currituck High School. I mean, there are places you just have to look for them. And you know, different people owning the different townhouses, like he said, that just shows right there. It could be, once they don't rent them at a higher price, it's gonna turn to lower income, and that's when crime starts. I mean, crime can start anywhere, but to me, I believe that that's where crime starts. But that's it. Thanks for listening.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, Mr. Ennis, you get a rebuttal period, if you'd like.
That's okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll close the public hearing, and we'll open it up for discussion among the board.
I don't think anybody's really arguing whether it's spot zoning, are we? I mean,
Well, I think with spot zoning, it's potentially spot zoning, but not all spot zoning is illegal.
right. My reason for asking is, I mean, if you look at the document that staff provided, I think one of the most important issues that needs to be resolved is balancing the benefits, looking at both, or all three, the community, the neighbors, and the owners, and figuring out what's detrimental to the owners or the community or the neighbors, and kind of balancing all three of those to try to figure out, is this something that's going to help or hurt? At any point, it doesn't matter how, according to this, you know, and it's all really kind of common sense. If even, no matter how beneficial it is to the owner, if it's substantially detrimental to the surrounding neighbors or the community, then the answer is no. But if it's, I mean, if it's so far, at least in my opinion, other than opinions about the community, I haven't heard anything that's going to be detrimental to either the community or the surrounding neighbors. And so, I mean, I would, and if you look earlier in this document, a couple of the court cases sided with the owners because the spot zoning was more restrictive on them, so they held it invalid. So, at least in my opinion, everything in this document would say that in this case, even if it is spot zoning, it's not necessarily illegal or wrong.
I agree. There's a community need addressed. I think,
Right.
and
You have to meet all criteria for
you,
spot zoning.
you got to meet all criteria. The
Right.
size of the tract is a factor, which this is a larger piece. It's in a full service, and this density in full service is fine. It's where we get into the airport overlay is where there's a potential issue. Is that correct, Donna?
That is correct. The airport overlay, or the, excuse me, let me get back here to this map. Your airport impact zone, Zone 3, you want low density residential in Zone 3. Low density is typically about 1 unit per acre. What they're requesting is 4. Whoops.
If I'm not mistaken, isn't the Ponderosa Trailer Park right in that same zone?
Ponderosa Mobile Home Park is across the street in this area. It is in the same employment area.
It's in the same zone, right.
Yes. So the hopes
That's
are
that's
someday
even more dense.
that someday that would become an employment area upon redevelopment.
What about the aviation subdivision with Happy Landing Drive? What are they zoned in? Because they're in the overlay, and obviously because of having the airplanes and a hangar in your yard, I guess it kind of fits. But as far as how they're zoned in relation,
It's lower density.
because of the lower density, that's the difference, the noise and.
Yeah, well, it's residential development is permitted. It's the density is what we're talking about on this one. The density is what's different.
Ms. Vottle, am I correct in saying that they are receiving an additional bonus of density because of the presence of the septic system that exists there?
There are sustainability incentives that are issued. You have to qualify so many points per item selected, and you have to pick multiple items. It would not be just a septic system. I think what they are choosing are two from Schedule A, which has to do with Energy Star air conditioners, tankless hot water heaters, and then Schedule B, you had to select 4. That's the eave overhangs along the southern or western exposures, shade features along windows and doors on the southern facade, 150-foot undisturbed buffer surrounding all wetlands or surface waters, and the provision of rain gardens or other appropriate stormwater infiltration BMP systems. Now, they are actually proposing to connect to the county's wastewater treatment facility, and achieving this density on septic systems may not have been possible. We don't know that to be true without that being explored as well.
And by them connecting to the existing septic system, that would also give the county in the amount of about $800,000 in septic fees that they would get for the connection of all these units to that.
I'm not sure of the amounts, but it's probably be close to that.
Yeah, it was in that range based on the minutes that we saw.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, the base zoning of the current zoning is agricultural. The maximum density is 1 unit per acre. Is that correct?
In the agricultural zoning district, once it's based on the amount of open space that you designate. Multifamily is not a development option in the agricultural zoning district. So depending on the amount of open space that you dedicate, it could be anywhere from 0.3 units per acre to probably 0.6 units per acre based on the amount of open space. So somewhere in that neighborhood.
So if they were to
Not even 1 unit per acre.
So if this were to fail, there still is an option for them to develop this as agricultural
Yes,
and still connect to the septic system.
should they choose to do so.
Donna, do you know the approximate acreage of the 4 lots that are already developed? Approximately.
I would say that they're probably close to an acre in size, each of them. I don't know, Mr. Ennis may be more aware of what the size of those existing lots.
I believe that's about correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And how many housing units are proposed according to this plan now?
Well, there are 63 proposed
63.
on a little over 15 acres, 15.74 acres.
Wasn't that 8 units per building?
8 units per building with
And one
one building.
office.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, eight separate buildings.
Well, then I have a question. if this is just a rezoning, and we're talking about what's going to be, but yet we're told that they don't know what's going to be. As far as they're asking for the mixed residential, but he's not being specific about how many buildings and how many. Is that right?
I don't think we have to be at this point, do we?
Well, he has presented his request, which includes 8 two-story buildings. Though they will be 63 units. Each unit will have 8 units, and each building will have 8 units, with the exception of the one. That's part of their conditions spelled out in their request.
It was on the screen earlier, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But so as a conditional rezoning, they are bound to
Oh, they are?
what we're being.
Okay.
It becomes.
They're bound to, as part of a conditional rezoning request, this is their conditions that they are presenting to the board that they are requesting approval of, and they are bound to that. Now, it's not a vesting plan, so should the county make any changes to the ordinance, it could affect the development potential of this property
So
at any point until they obtain their building permit.
I guess my question is, if somebody else comes in and buys this property from this family, they are bound to develop it as this is presented.
To the conditions in the plan submitted.
Okay, thank you.
However, they could come back and request a change in that.
Yes, they could.
They still have to go through the same process
They
as
would.
Right,
these
yeah.
folks had.
That's correct.
Well, just, I mean, thinking through it, the density in the full service classification, which is where we're at, that's okay. I mean, that, the full district or the full service classification is where the county has said we want these type of projects. But then layered on top of that is the airport overlay, which discourages this type of project. And then on top of that, it's a project that has demonstrated a degree of community need. In fact, without the airport overlay, it would seem to be almost an ideal location with the proximity to the Y and close to Elizabeth City and close to the state line and close to the high school and Central Elementary and those type of things. So, you know, just talking through it, you weigh pros and cons. We've looked at the spot zoning, which, you know, if we were to agree it possibly is spot zoning, but not all spot zoning is illegal. Sometimes spot zoning is encouraged if there's a community benefit to it. You got to look at who's harmed. As far as who's harmed, the houses that are there now, as far as value goes, I have seen to where when a property is appraised, they're not going to use attached housing as a comparable to your single family home. Does it affect the desirability of it? You know, outside of value, does it make the desirability go down? Potentially. Does it make the desirability go up? Potentially, because you've got a paved road with increased amenities. We've seen it go both ways. So, I mean, I'm just thinking it out.
How big is the buffer around the side? They're leaving natural trees as proposed.
There is you've got the 150-foot buffer along the boundaries of the wetlands. This is
On the
the wetlands on this.
field side there.
Mhm. And then you have, I believe it's 25, it may be 50, I can't tell here. And I believe it's 50 here as well.
So 25, maybe 50 where the lots butt up to it as they're coming in.
Yeah, whoops. I can tell you.
Yeah, that's okay.
What, and
There is a buffer that is going to block view.
what kind of buffer would that, just, I mean, is there already natural vegetation there, trees, all that?
It's already trees.
Okay. Yeah.
There is a 20 5-foot type A landscape buffer required along this lot boundary. Here. And down to here, to the wetland area. They are required to maintain an agricultural buffer along this property line,
So that's 50 foot.
50 foot.
They're all mature trees that are there now to begin with, if I remember correct.
I think they're all pines.
So it's not like it's stuck out in the middle of a mining field either.
Any other discussion among the board?
I'd just like to reiterate the point that you made about the comparisons of properties, townhomes versus single-family dwellings would not be comparative in an appraisal. You would find that an appraiser would look for homes on similar acreage, similar size, similar looks, similar amenities, versus looking, even though those ones behind them would be closer, they would not be as comparable because it's a different style, a different type of ownership perhaps.
Is there anything else in Currituck County like this, townhomes, that kind of thing,
Wild Goose Landing.
That would be the most
on Parker
comparable.
Branch?
It's
Road?
further south. It's south end of the
Palace
county.
Point,
You're
Wait a
thinking of
minute.
Neal's Creek.
near
and
the car
Baldwin's.
wash area.
Right, right. Okay. Thank you.
That probably would be the most comparable.
The biggest issue here is the airport overlay, and it's saying that it's a zone for employment, as I'm seeing it.
That's a small area
That's the
plan.
small area
That's the
plan
small
has it
area
as
plan.
employment, which higher density residential is
It-
discouraged.
Basically, the
Then you-
airport overlay discourages residential.
The airport overlay, no, the
But what's the
airport,
big thing with the
Density.
airport overlay?
the airport
is the density
overlay is
itself?
density.
yeah.
Residential's okay.
Yeah,
It's
it is
the
okay. All right,
density.
I'm trying to make sure I don't confuse all the different.
Both of them in a roundabout way have all to do with density.
Yeah.
Neither one of them are saying residential is completely out of the category, even though it is employment. It doesn't mean that absolutely you can never put a residence there. That's not what it means. It's intended for employment, but a lower density residential use would still meet the requirements and the goals and objectives.
When you're saying employment, does that include like a small business that manufactures things?
It's intended to. Although the zoning may not be in place for that particular activity, it sets the framework up for a rezoning request.
So if that was requested for a rezoning to something commercial, it'd be more suitable?
Yes.
Really? Even with the lots in the front?
Excuse me?
Even with the lots in the
Well,
front?
I mean, it's not saying that you couldn't do it. It would not be encouraged
I'm
that
saying
you
it's-
had
It's set up more
major,
suitable for that, though.
it would not be encouraged to have major business through a residential neighborhood. There's land use plan policy statements that don't support that right now.
Well, since I've been on this board, which has been 2 years, we have talked numerous times about more affordable housing in Currituck, more places that a single person or a newly married couple or a retired couple would like to have, not only for the affordability of the place, but not having big yards to mow and all this stuff that goes with a big house and lots of land. And we just don't seem to ever get there. We talk about it, and we say we need it, and we think the county would be better off with it, but
Or ones we have
We've
approved
never
have
done
been
it.
disapproved by
yeah,
the other board.
the other board. But you know, it's like everything almost that comes before us. There are so many pros and there are so many cons. It is so difficult to make a decision that is fair to all involved.
It is.
And Mr. Ennis has made some excellent points and has reached out to other resources to try to prove his pro aspect to having this. And regardless of whoever builds these things, they'll still have to go by the plan that is approved, if it is approved. And it won't be like they'll be able to change it and switch it all to manufactured homes or doing something else. It's going to be what is approved on the plan by their preliminary ones here.
And if the information came out of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, it's gospel.
Unless you went to Duke, right?
No, I didn't go to Duke.
And a lot of times you have to look at the logic of, let's say, the airport compatible use zone 3. They're proposing to have this be able to be there. People are talking about density. Okay, how many people are in the YMCA at any given time exercising or babysitting or on Sundays attending church there? How many people are in there at one time when the possibility could be for an aircraft disaster? How many people are in the agricultural building at any given time? How many people are in across the street at the at the school, at the other park across the
Mobile
street?
home, yeah.
The college.
The logic behind not putting it there because it is a greater risk is not really real, because the risk already exists in these other buildings that the county built part of.
Good point.
And it is a fact that the existence of where this property is on the fringes of both the compatible use zone 3 and also just inside of the Maple Barco plan. So it's on the fringe area of both of those.
All right, one last question on the airport overlay. Where did that originate from? Did that have help from the airport itself or?
FAA
Yes.
does.
All right. Any other questions or discussion? All right, then we'll call for a motion.
I make a motion to approve PB 1518, conditional rezoning of 15.78 acres from agricultural to conditional mixed residential due to its consistency with the goals and objectives and policies of the land use plan, the density allowances for full service classification and land use plan, and the sustainability policies of the Maple Barco small area plan. The request is reasonable, and I really do believe that it's in the public interest, and it's going to demonstrate a very urgent community need.
All right.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Okay, on to new business, we have, I'm sorry?
Somebody's trying to get in.
Is that you, Mr. Gaither?
Somebody trying to get out? Somebody trying to get in?
He's trying to get in.
We are?
I wasn't invited.
Mr. Gaither, were you signed up to speak for that previous item?
Yeah, but I don't see the need now.
Okay. I didn't skip you on purpose.
I was gonna preach a sermon.
Okay, all right, well, maybe next time.
Good.
All right. Old business is complete.
Jim off.
Yeah. Well, I thought I asked.
Well, the fact that they didn't put down the item is confusing.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Old business is complete. On to new business. We're at PB 15-22, Wild Ropes Adventure Park text amendment, height limits. Request to amend the Unified Development Ordinance to include aerial adventure parks and the list of exceptions to the height limits. Before we get started, I want to remind the board and the public that this is a text amendment to the UDO, not involving any particular project. This is a countywide text amendment.
Thank
Yes,
you,
ma'am.
Mr. Chairman. Brett Harrison, the applicant, has requested a text amendment to add aerial adventure parks to the list of height exceptions. An aerial adventure park typically offers combinations of elements often associated with high ropes courses, such as rope and wire bridges, nets, balance challenges, obstacles, and zip lines. And height is kind of important in constructing an aerial adventure park. Exceeding the maximum building height of the ordinance, 35 feet, is necessary for the construction of an aerial adventure park. Some examples in the ordinance that are already exceptions to the height requirements are silos, chimneys, church spires, domes, cupolas, flagpoles, monuments, and water towers. The applicant has provided some height comparisons for you to see. There's a beach house with a 35-foot mean roof height. Overall height shown there is 40 feet. The tower, or a tower that would be similar to one constructed for an aerial adventure park, neighboring wind turbine, mature pine trees that range from 50 to 80 feet high, and then the lighthouse that's right adjacent. If you click to the next slide, there's also the Corolla Light Water Tower. Just to give an example, staff, through discussion, has recommended that instead of just carving out a special exception for aerial adventure parks, that the height exception actually be for outdoor recreation uses, and that certain conditions also are added to that. One is to include a maximum overall height of 60 feet. Also require a 1 foot setback per foot of structure height for structures that do exceed the 35-foot height requirement. And also that guy wires need to meet the setbacks for the zoning district that the structure is located in. That text amendment is similar to the requirements that are in the ordinance already for towers. The applicant is in agreement with staff's suggested language, the changes and that we've incorporated. In order to approve a text amendment, the board needs to adopt a statement of consistency and reasonableness, and staff has suggested language and recommends approval of the text amendment. Do you have any questions for me at this time?
Any questions for staff?
In the past, when we've done the text amendments, if the applicant wasn't here and we wanted to modify the text, I mean, were we allowed to do that on recommendation from the staff?
If the applicant's not here,
Because it's his application.
He
it
is
here?
here. He's here.
Oh, okay,
Okay,
good.
so we can, all right, then I can ask that
Okay,
question.
hold
in a
on,
minute.
hold
Yep,
on.
yep, sorry.
Okay, no, good point. I'm glad you're here. The 1 foot setback, is that from the property line or in addition to the typical setback?
It's from the property line.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Other questions for staff? All right, then we'll ask the applicant to come up and present your case, please.
Okay. Thanks for having
Name and
me.
address.
Yeah, here tonight. My name is Brett Harrison. I live at 341 Nags Way Court in Nags Head. I basically had a short PowerPoint that I had given to the at the community meeting, which sort of gives some background on what an adventure park is. If it's the board's pleasure, I can kind of describe that, so it maybe would more familiarize you with the project that we are proposing.
Sure.
Okay, and so it's Wild Ropes Adventure Park. You will see on these slides there's a bit of a dichotomy because on the bottom of the slide you'll see the website First Flight Adventure Park. The reason I put that is because we don't have a developed website for the new project, obviously. So if you were looking for more, anybody was looking for more information at any time to see what the project would look like, that's the website for the park that we built in Nags Head.
One thing I want to make sure that you're not getting ahead of yourself, that
Okay.
is this for your specific project or is this for the text amendment in general?
Well,
I mean, do you
guess
have
both,
two
because
separate?
I'm going to present just information, and I don't really know how to separate the two.
I
So I'm going
understand.
to give you a background part of this presentation is the background, and then part of it does go into that specific one.
Okay.
Because it was sort of the.
Hey, how about let this one be more generic and like show us pictures like in general of what these parks look like?
Okay.
And then for your actual project, get more in depth in it, because I don't want us to ask questions about your project right now.
Right, I understand. It's a little bit hard to
I do understand.
I can go about halfway through the slideshow, and then maybe I'll kind of drop out from
Perfect. Okay.
there. Before I go into the rest of it. So, I guess you guys are gonna control it. Okay, so to understand what an adventure park is, you first need to know what a ropes course is. That's really the core of what an adventure park is. It's basically a structure that's built, as the name implies, with rope, often cable, wood. It's often put in the trees. And these are structures that are built for experience and education. They're used for team building, problem solving. They take people and put them in different situations and encourage them to think sort of outside the box and in different situations than they're normally in life. These were first notably employed by a company called Outward Bound, which takes at-risk youths and puts them in the woods, does different things. And they use team building activities, games, and ropes course activities to really help work and transform these kids. But pretty soon after they employed it, many other educational facilities also saw the benefit of that. This is just a smattering of logos, but really you'd be hard pressed to go to any major university, often schools, and not find some sort of ropes course. We actually helped build one in Camden County, a low ropes course there at the intermediate school, and I believe Currituck County actually has one proposed for one of your county parks too, a 60-foot Alpine Tower ropes course right there. So that's a little bit about that. If you can go to the next one. This is just an example of one of the larger high ropes courses we helped build for the University of Florida. Just some pictures during construction to show one of those, the similarities. And you can go on. They also have military applications. You see them everywhere. The ones on military bases are more what would you call a challenge course. It's more of the highest difficulty level, big climbing towers, rappelling. But the same core of education, experience, and learning applies to really all of these different things. If you don't mind, I'm going to grab my water.
Sure.
Anyway, it applies to all of these different things. So you can go to the next one. So really, what's an aerial adventure park? It's really just a big ropes course. That's all it is. It's a commercialized version of that. It's choose your adventure. You go more as an individual, but you still go out there with your family, your friends. You still have that group team experience, but it allows the general public to access many of these same things that were before reserved for small groups at camps or different situations like that. The biggest difference, what's allowed us to make this a commercial venture, was the advent of the continuous belay system. Essentially, you can see these are racks of them here. They're trolleys that the participants are clipped into with a full body harness. We do this before they go out on the course, and then they can go out and choose and guide themselves through this challenging adventure at different levels. We have typical adventure parks have lower levels, easier stuff. You'll find younger folks there, and then you have those higher, more difficult levels to really gain the challenge that you want for more physically active, daredevil folks. But that way you get the whole spectrum of a family challenge, and that's what an adventure park in general is designed to do, is to bring that experience and give it to the public. The next one might be, so this is where we get into our next one with this next slide, so I can kind of stop there. That gets more project specific. So I guess that's the nature of what an adventure park is. And I guess for the need for the height, basically the height is, it has to have the height, because without it, it's really just a low ropes course, a playground on the ground, and you can't give that whole family experience, you know, the 18-year-old kid or the active adult that wants to really push their limits. They don't get the same experience if you don't give them those challenging obstacles at a height. And that's really what enables our business model to work. Yeah.
Gotta have adrenaline to make it
You
fun.
gotta have it. I think they say above 30 feet is where it kind of kicks in for people. Height is one of the two fears we were born with, height and loud noises. So we don't really do the loud noise thing, but we go for the height thing.
I thought it was public speaking.
That's one of them. It's one of them. Questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. All right, for the public hearing, 15-22.
This is just on the amendment, though.
This is for the amendment. I've got a few people signed up that, I don't have an item number. There's a Mr. and Mrs. Luton. Is this, do you want to speak on the countywide amendment? All right, come on up, please.
I represent the Board of Directors for the Villages of Ocean Hill, and we prepared a statement which addresses both the text amendment as it affects our community and the building of the structure within our community.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want me to read that at this point.
I'd say probably address if there's a
It's
a
all
non-project.
blended.
I understand. I know, and that's why I keep kind of hammering that over and over, because we as a board have to consider them separately.
Okay.
So anything that you'd like to say about the county-wide text amendment that's non-project specific, because this could be a similar project happens next year in Moyock or Harbinger or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah, and we do appreciate that, that you're looking at this for the county-wide. And, I guess where we get caught in this is that, this is being proposed to be built in our community. And I've seen the one in Nags Head, which is in a very open
Oh,
space.
I'm sorry. Will you give your name and address for the
sure.
record?
My name is Beth Lutton, Lutton, and I own a home at 1251 Lakeside Court in the Villages of Ocean Hill, Corolla.
Thank you, and thank you for the reminder. Okay.
So the issues, the county has, traditionally really held to a height restriction, which I think in the northern beaches certainly adds a lot to the various communities. In our community, many of the communities, you don't see telephone poles, electrical lines are all underground. So it's a very different feel than you see down in Nags Head, Kitty Hawk. And from that perspective, I think, the text amendment, if it were granted, can have a negative impact on certain communities. If you're putting this in a park, I know there are several places in North Carolina. Raleigh has one of these facilities, so does, I think it's Charlotte, and they're in national parks. They're not structures built in residential communities. So, the issue for us is, as I said, it gets complicated because one is tied to the other.
Understand. Okay. All right. Well, I think your point's well taken. That where you live in particular, there's not things there this high outside of
Right.
water towers and a lighthouse. So, your point's well taken.
Okay.
Thank you. Also have Mr. Tom. Did you want to speak to this as well? Okay. All right. I'm sorry, I can't read the last name. Beth and Rich. Is this for this item?
We just meant to sign in.
Okay, so
Beth-
you're here
yeah,
for the show.
I would reiterate what Beth just said. We live in the Villages also for 10 years, and it's just a different environment up there than it is down in Nags Head. I wanted to ask you...
Will you come up to the podium, please? Name and address for the record.
Well, I'm here. Beth Siegel, and I live at 1259 Lakeside Drive, Corolla. I just had a question for the applicant, Mr. Harrison, is it?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you own the one in Nags Head?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so have you done this before?
I am the general manager of the one in Nags Head, and I've built
Oh, you
other
are?
ones.
Okay, so...
I'm affiliated with it. I'm just not owner.
Okay, and I'm not sure if the board has seen the one in Nags Head.
I designed the one in Nags Head.
If they need to see that versus what would go in right next to our homes and Villages. But if it's anything similar, it's a whole different
It
environment.
would be nearly identical, some differences, but to be completely honest, it would be almost identical.
Right, except that one is way out in the open without any houses nearby.
It is open, in the
Right.
open area.
That's all I was gonna add. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
Another person wanted to speak to, John.
I did.
Brett Harrison?
Yes.
Okay. Who's raising their hand?
Mary Westlanco.
All right, come up, please.
Hi, I'm Mary Westlanco. We have a home at 1204 Windance Lane in the villages of Ocean Hill. And I don't know, has anyone seen the height of this proposed structure? I guess we'll have to talk about that the next.
If it's
Okay.
project specific, it's the next
Gotcha.
case.
Okay, then if I could just call your attention to this image here. I believe actually that this is my house here, okay, because our house will butt right to it across the road. Now, this diagram is it's interesting because the perspective is not quite right. There is a windmill, in fact, down the street, and typically windmills are 60 feet high in the sky, okay? This one on Route 12 is not. I don't know if you've seen it or not. The one on Route 12 is actually, Jim, is it lower than the roof of our house, or is it about the same roof?
It's probably about 45 feet.
Okay, so it's a little deceiving when you look at a diagram like this, okay? And of course, a lighthouse you expect to be massive. When you look at this, the impact of this height, and I know that you're going for a text amendment here, to allow structures of this height in this area that are not associated with the county like the water tower is and the lighthouse is. It does have a very big impact on the views of the area and on the residents of the area. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. David Holla?
Yeah. I'm Dave Holla. I got a house, 1258 Lakeside Drive, and I'm there. I don't rent it out. I'm there most of the time. So, but the one thing I want to mention, you're going to be doing a text amendment for the entire county of Currituck, and you're proposing that maybe you're going to exceed 35 feet, which we have the restriction, and I built my own home that I was restricted to 35 feet. Now, if you make a text amendment to the entire county, that means what's the next thing that's going to be 60 feet, right? And then what's the next thing then when you get a text amendment for 75? When you go down outside of Currituck and you get down on Route 12, like you're going through, they just put a new tower up for cell phones, right? And I know the gentleman that owns the house right at that corner, and I think you all know where that's located, right? This tower is like, is it 100, 150 feet in the air? It's an eyesore. You know, at least they could have done was put a flag at the top there and called it a flagpole. All I'm asking the planning board to do is to be very careful on this issue of 60 feet. If you do it up in Corolla, where I have my home, and I will see this, all right, then somebody else can do it any place in Currituck. The next thing you're going to do, you're coming down 168, you're going to be going through Moyock, and you're going to see nothing but high-rise towers. So if it's going to affect you, and I know it will, because you live in this area, you don't live in our area, all right? You start seeing structures that are 60 feet high in the air as you're going down 168 on your way home from work, all right? That's going to bother you. But you're the ones that will be setting the precedent here tonight. And it can't be. You can't exceed the 35 feet unless it's special. That wind tower is generating electricity. It's green. I would have voted for that if I was on the board. Okay? So please be careful on this issue, right? This 60 foot, I mean, you know, Corolla Light hasn't even registered in to talk on this subject, but I'll guarantee you, all the way to Brindley's office on Route 12, they will be able to see the telephone poles and the tower that is being proposed to be built. So it's a beautiful area, You get a lot of tax money from us, all right? Don't listen to the majority of the people that are up there and saying no to this particular issue. You can't do 60 feet on anything except the Corolla Lighthouse. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have signed up. Is anyone else here that wanted to speak to this item? Now, this is the countywide text amendment, not a particular project. All right, you get a rebuttal.
That's okay.
Okay. All right, close the public hearing. All right, and discussion among the board. I had a question on the 60-foot that's proposed. What type of structures can be 60 feet?
Yeah, because it's not delineated in the amendment.
Structures associated with outdoor recreation uses,
Okay, so
provided they meet the criteria that are proposed in the text amendment.
in that specific text amendment. Okay.
Other than things that are already, have special requirements in the ordinance and some of the exceptions that I read in the presentation
So a 60-foot water slide?
would be considered outdoor recreation.
Okay.
Roller coaster?
Just to clarify too, this text amendment allowing height of 60 feet does not pertain to residential or other structures. This only pertains to outdoor recreational facilities.
Right. Yeah, that's what
Make
I
sure
was.
everybody's understanding in the audience, we're not changing the height that you can build other structures. Only if this passes would allow a 60-foot height on outdoor recreational facilities.
Outdoor recreation, right. And
I mean, although I was being somewhat flip about it, I mean, in the text amendment here, the proposed text amendment, it just says outdoor recreational activities. I mean, someone comes along and proposes, I mean, there's no, who's to say what's a recreational activity and what's not? How do we,
They still have to get approval to do whatever they're gonna do.
sure, but wouldn't it be easier to get that approval if there's already amendment and it says they can build something 60 feet as long as it's for recreational? You get where I'm going with that?
Well, not necessarily.
What I'm saying is I don't necessarily disagree with the recommendation. What I'm looking at is how do we because we don't know what we don't know. I mean, how do we know what people in the future are going to want to build and call it recreation without some sort of restriction in this text amendment, the amendment? Other than just saying anything outdoor recreation can be 60 feet high.
I see what you're saying, and also see it being difficult to
That's my
define
point.
each.
That's my point. Yeah.
Whether it be the rope obstacle course,
Yeah.
the water slide, bungee jumping, whatever.
And you're talking about the entire county. So how do we define a recreational activity, outdoor recreation?
In Chapter 10, there's use classifications, use categories, and use types, where it gives you the characteristics of outdoor recreation and examples of outdoor recreation type uses, and then some exceptions.
So it is already defined then?
Yes.
Okay. And these are only in certain zones. They're considered commercial uses. Screenings required. I mean, these particular types of projects, we travel a lot, and we've gone to these type of projects in Spotsylvania. We've gone in Massanutten, and it's great family time. And as far as it being an option for entertainment here in the county, it's clean, it's green, it's ropes and poles. Probably not going to be a lot of light type, noise. There's not motors. There's not a lot of light. I don't know what type of nighttime operating hours there would be on each particular project. That'd be something to look at on a case-by-case basis.
I guess I'm just concerned with the unintended consequences for the entire county if we say just a blanket policy
Yeah.
without sort of delineating.
Without defining an outdoor recreation.
I believe she said it was already defined.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't see it, and I see some references to Section 10, but I
Where
don't.
did you say that definition was again? I'm sorry.
It's in Chapter 10, 10.4.5, commercial use classification.
We don't have that, do we?
Not within the text amendment.
Yeah, it's not in.
Not within the text amendment, no.
That's
Are you able to read us these things that are described
Sure.
as being outdoor recreation?
I'll read the characteristics. The outdoor recreation entertainment use category includes use types that are large, generally commercial, and provide continuous recreation or entertainment-oriented activities that primarily take place outdoors. They may take place in a number of structures that are arranged together in an outdoor setting. Accessory uses may include concessions, parking, and maintenance facilities. Examples. Example use types include privately owned arenas, amphitheaters, or stadiums, outdoor commercial recreation uses, including private golf driving ranges and privately owned miniature golf facilities, go-kart racing, racetrack, or dirt track facilities, drive-in movie theaters, privately owned outdoor commercial tourist attractions, water parks, and amusement parks, and privately owned active sports facilities such as ball fields, courts, shooting ranges, and archery ranges, athletic facilities, and private golf courses and outdoor swimming pools. Exceptions, publicly owned golf courses, tennis courts, swimming pools, basketball courts, ball fields, and other similar outdoor recreational or entertainment-oriented facilities are classified as parks and open space, and police firing ranges are classified as public safety facilities.
Okay.
So everything I mentioned is addressed.
Pretty specific.
Yeah. You even said water slide and
I did.
roller coaster. It's in there.
It's in there.
A little different wording, that's it.
Another thing to maybe note about outdoor recreation, in plan unit developments, outdoor recreation uses require use permits.
So it's examined case by case.
Got it.
In a plan unit development. Okay.
Yeah, they do.
All right. Discussion among the board.
I had a question. Can you describe to us what a type D buffer is and to the public?
A type D buffer? Do you know off the top of your head?
As it's shown on our packet, page 37, where it says outdoor recreation uses shall comply with the following standards. Outdoor recreation uses shall be screened from abutting major arterial streets with a type D buffer. Sorry to
Type
put
D
you on the
buffer is an
spot.
opaque buffer. The perimeter buffer function as an opaque screen from the ground to a height of at least 6 feet. This type of buffer prevents visual contact between uses and creates a strong impression of total separation. And there are two options. Do you want me to read those to you about the types of trees? Or
6 feet.
What are the two options? Trees?
a
and-
25-foot width buffer with canopy trees, understory trees, and shrubs, and then a 10-foot buffer with a 6-foot-high solid fence, canopy trees.
So at a minimum, any buffering would be at least 6 foot in height.
Correct.
Am I right in saying that it's only buffered against the major arteries, not against side streets and so forth?
It is.
Major arterial streets. Yeah.
Correct.
And no associated outdoor features shall be located between the front facade of the building and the street fronting the lot. So if there were a project on Highway 158, the building would be in front of the the water slide or the rope obstacle course or whatever. So more than likely, you'd have your parking building, and then the outdoor entertainment behind it. All right. Other discussion among the board?
If I could get a little bit more clarification on for every foot above 35 feet in height, they add 1 foot of setback from the front, side, and rear property lines. Does that mean that if the particular zoning has a 10-foot setback, does this add another foot, or is it only, let's say in the instance of one being 60 feet high, that's 25 feet difference over 35. Does that mean that the minimum property setback will be 25? Does that supersede the normal zoning?
For a structure that exceeds 35 feet, it's 1 foot per foot of structure height. So if it's 35 feet or less, it just has to meet the required setback for that zoning district. But if it's up to 60 feet, then yes.
Say it's
Does it
60
add to
feet,
the
60
existing-
feet off the property line.
No, it's per foot of structure height. It doesn't add to.
So it'd be
So if
25
it was
more
10
feet.
and it was 25, I mean, then it was 60 feet, it wouldn't be 70, it would be,
It would be 60.
okay.
Right.
I'm sorry, Jenny. It's a foot of setback per foot of height.
Right.
Yeah, it's an either or, the 10-foot, or if it's above 35 feet, it would go 60 feet.
Okay. So 60 foot high, it's 60 foot off any property line.
Right. Or 40 foot high, 40 foot off the side property line. 35 feet high, meet the setback for the zoning
Falls
district.
back to standard
So
setback.
not the
Right.
difference from 35 up, but whatever the height is.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that for me.
Good question. All right. Any other questions or discussion? And we'll call for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve, for the reasons discussed. It's consistent with the goals, objectives and policies of the land use plan, promote new businesses.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
2.
Me and-
Okay, motion carries. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, next item of new business is PB 15-23, Wild Ropes Adventure Park use permit. Request for a use permit to operate an aerial adventure park. Ms. Turner, are you presenting this as well?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brett Harrison of Wild Ropes Adventure Park has submitted a use permit application to operate an aerial adventure park on property located in the Villages at Ocean Hill PUD in Corolla. Here's the aerial map. The property is located approximately 1/2 of a mile north of the Currituck Lighthouse, in north of Corolla Village, just north of distinctive landscaping, and south of the Villages at Ocean Hill PUD residential properties. Zoning, yeah. The property is zoned PUD with commercial allocation. The property to the west and south is zoned PUD with commercial allocation also. The property to the south contains a water treatment area as well as distinctive landscaping, and to the west there's a towing impound lot and some other like landscaping type uses back there. The to the east is Ocean Hill, single family houses, and NC12. The land use plan classifies the property as full service within the Corolla sub area. A community meeting was held on November 23rd, and some of the community concerns included the proposed height of the aerial adventure park, exterior lighting, removal of the structure if the business were to fail, and safety was also a concern. Here's the conceptual plan for the use permit. There has been a question raised about access and whether or not the applicant actually has legal access to use a small portion of Ponton Lane that would be right adjacent to the driveway. Right there, Donna. Yes, right there. And so the applicant today has actually submitted another conceptual plan with a slightly different access coming directly off of the feeder road. If you click the next one, you can see the access. So that's the alternate access. And of course, these are just conceptual plans, and the applicant will be required to meet the requirements of the ordinance. Landscaping will be required per the ordinance. Minimal lighting is proposed for the building only. No proposed lighting on the aerial adventure park itself. The applicant is proposing to operate during daylight hours only. And there is a note in the staff report about the sewer reservation letter, and staff did receive a letter from Envirotech today stating that they will serve this use. In order for the board to approve a use permit, it must adopt findings for certain criteria established in the Unified Development Ordinance. And based on the application, staff has prepared suggested findings for each one in your staff report. TRC and staff recommend approval subject to the proposed conditions. That's kind of the conceptual plan. Approval subject to the proposed conditions, that the text amendment is approved, that access issues are resolved, and the letter has been received. And of course, major site plan approval will be required for construction of the aerial adventure park. That concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for staff from the board?
So just so the public understands, the letter that you received today from the health department, more or less, was that they have been approved to connect to septic?
To and sewer, yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions for staff? All right, thank you. All right, applicant, you had to give your name and address again.
Yeah, Brett Harrison, 341 Nags Way Court, Nags Head. And I guess we sort of went into half of my presentation already. Would it be possible to cue, I guess, back to that point of the PowerPoint? So getting into the project-specific area, it would go back to the last one, actually. It would be how will this affect Kerala? And as you mentioned, I mean, it's a family-oriented activity. It's daylight hours only. You know, when we built the one in Nags Head, we had been involved in the industry, but it was our first time operating, you know, our personal one. And I was, you know, uncertain how everybody would react. And one of our first groups was actually a birthday party of young boys. And as they were coming back in, you know, you're wondering the reception. And the first kid came to me and looked with like beaming eyes and said, "This was the most amazing thing I've done in my whole life." And that's really been the reaction that we've had ever since we've been open. It's almost kind of humbling because you see these transformational experiences, you see awesome stuff from people of all ages who go out there and challenge themselves and do things they couldn't believe, you know, they didn't know if they could do. Or you see families have these shared experiences that they don't otherwise have, you know, because otherwise they come on vacation and there are certain activities that are out there, but nothing that I think offers what this does. It does still have, you know, it's a commercialized version of a ropes course, but I think it still does offer a lot of that experience and sort of educational benefits that a traditional ropes course offers. And also it is very low impact. The adventure park itself does not have power or water, doesn't use gasoline, it doesn't create noise. The only sounds coming from it are the sounds of the people enjoying themselves. As far as time, like I said, daylight, our first groups, we typically start at 8 a.m. And then our last groups we would send out at 6 p.m. So they start filtering off the course. And by 8 p.m., everybody's gone. And by 9 p.m., our staff is out of there. And that's during the peak of daylight hours. It shrinks as the daylight tapers. But as far as a time frame of when we operate. And then how it looks, and folks had asked how the one in Nag's Head looks. The next slide is actually a picture of that one. I know there's probably disagreement as to the attractiveness of it, but we think it looks awesome. We think they're really neat structures. This one is, you can see, very much out in the open. It's actually built in upper wetlands. But it's a semi-transparent structure. You can see the sunset right there through it. On this particular piece of property, it actually would be built in existing vegetation that's much higher than this. Much of that vegetation is already in the 20-25 foot range, I would say. And we, being conservationists, would conserve as much of that and propagate it, clean out noxious weeds and encourage it to grow up. Because when they are amongst trees, they do take on an even more magical experience that we think is really neat. And so we would really promote that buffer. And I believe that over time, it wouldn't be really all that much of a distraction as folks might initially think. I can see how it would be shocking and seem like it would be this huge eyesore, but I just don't personally think it will. But I understand definitely viewpoints, and all that, and preferences. So I guess the next one, I have a couple more of experiences. How is it going to look? Adults become kids. Kids have fun. It's a great experience. And also, next slide, team. We encourage local organizations to come participate. We have Nag's Head Ocean Rescue. This is them. Come do their training. The local fire departments down there come do training. We encourage that and would hope to have that same relationship with Kerala, Ocean Rescue and Fire, coming up there and being involved in the course. And so the last slide would be, why are we qualified, which I think that question kind of came up. And basically it's my two partners and I, between the three of us, have probably close to 30 years of experience in the industry or tangential industries. Brad and Alex were both previously foremen at the top of that industry for a building company, Challenge Design Innovations. I was a lead builder and a designer for that company. I kind of went into that route and worked more in the design, and I was more of a liaison between construction and design, the field architecture part of it. And so that's kind of our different roles. And that company we worked for, just so you know who we were working for, the owner of that company actually wrote the complete ropes course manual, which is the adopted textbook for use in universities. So we came from a premier background of understanding this and really wanted to essentially come off the road and bring what we had learned to do and what we had built all around the country and bring this special experience to the Outer Banks. So we did that with the first phase with the one in Nag's Head, and now we'd like to learn from what we did and do it better, honestly, even better than we did down there in Kerala, and build on that. And as mentioned with the packet, we follow, it's in the same slide, sorry. We follow ACCT standards, Association for Challenge Course Technology. They're really the body that decides the premium standards. Not everybody builds to those standards, but we think anybody that's allowed to build in any area should be held to those standards. And we also have their inspectors come, it's a third party, come from one of the organizations and inspect the courses annually. And we're held to that, and our insurance holds us to that, so that if anything that they see fails, we have to fix it in order to continue operating. And we also have that same outside training for our staff, so that we have continuous third-party training and top of the line, so everything is cohesive and is run first class. And then we continue to train all of our staff on a weekly basis after that. So we really strive to be a personal experience and to run the best organization that we could possibly run. So.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
I have a question regarding, let's say, your normal business practice. What happens to folks when they are at your facility and there begins to be inclement weather let's say if it begins to rain heavily or lightning, what are the typical business practices for the people and the personnel that are there?
Yeah, we keep a close eye on the weather and the radar. Rain does not really affect our ability to operate. By nature, if it's pouring rain, people typically leave and don't want to come. It sort of shuts us down just by the choice of the individuals. But lightning, if we detect lightning, see it in the area, we do pull people off the course, and we hold it until that has cleared. Because obviously we'd be held liable if that were to happen to us. So we're very cautious. We watch the weather continuously, and it's a constant source of concern, and probably one of our greatest stresses is monitoring and reacting to that and keeping our staff trained on the best way to manage that and the best way to bring people off the tower sort of systematically.
What is the typical amount of liability insurance that you have to carry in order to cover?
$1 million.
How long would it take somebody to go through the whole course from beginning to end? I mean,
We
do they select?
get that question a lot. It varies by individual because a lot of people cannot make it through everything. We typically give people 2 hours on the course, and I would say the majority of the time people use pretty much all of that. There are people that can get through it faster, maybe an hour if they're really proficient and there's nobody else out there. But typically 2 hours is enough time to experience all of it. But by the end of that time, people are pretty much pooped and done if they even last that long.
Am I correct in saying that the insurance that you must have in order to operate also protects you while you are closed? So if a person were to enter your structure
Yes, but
and they get injured when you are not in operation, does that also cover you as well?
Correct. But we do put in a lot of safeguards to pretty much make that pretty close to physically impossible. We barricade the whole first level. So we have a lot of access prevention, and that's part of the reason for the height is even the easiest bottom levels are about 12 feet above ground, and that's because unless you can scale a telephone pole, you can't really get to 12 feet, and so that's part of it. And then basically they stack up from there.
Is it an either or? Do you start? I mean, when you go in, do you say I want to do the easy, medium, or the hardcore?
You can do anything you want to do. We require that everyone start on an easy level because a lot of people don't understand quite how difficult the top can be, and they think, oh, this is going to be a walk in the park, you know. So we require that just so we give them a ground training anyway, but then so they really get a feel for the use of the equipment and what they're experiencing on the course in the easiest setting. Once they complete the easier ones, then they can work their ways up, and they can skip to more difficult ones. But at that point in time, they have more of an understanding of what they're doing.
And
really, a lot of people don't know, and we really do have to educate people. And most people do come off and say, "Wow, that was a lot more challenging than I expected." That's our goal, you know, for the challenging stuff. We want to offer that full spectrum.
Yeah, those cargo nets aren't as easy as they look. And at any given time, how many employees do you have on staff?
That varies greatly seasonally. We can have up to about a dozen people at the most working at a time, but it's rare we would have that many. But we can operate with 3 or 4. Usually it's somewhere in the middle. But in total, we employ at the peak of the summer 30 to 35 staff in order to 7 days a week be able to, you know, keep the operation running.
Right.
Back to the inclement weather. Very often down here, you get storms that come up very quickly.
Yes, they
and
do.
you've got people 60 feet above the ground, you know, starting through how long does it take you, and how do you get those people that are in the middle of the course when that lightning starts?
Well, our guides and facilitators are trained to go out and to remove people from any part of the course at any time and for any reason, and that's what they train to do every week. So if need be, they have special equipment that allows them to get to any part on the course very rapidly, like under a minute. And
Like man lifts or something like that?
No. They get out there and we manually lower them with a belay system. So we have rope and we clip them into a separate system and we can lower them straight to the ground. So, and we do that we do that on a daily basis because people go out on the higher levels and go to a more challenging thing than they really can do, and overexert themselves and become exhausted and can't complete the course, even though it's designed for easy self-rescue. I would say in the peak of the summer, daily, we do it at least once a day. We lower someone out of the course. And, not to any avail of, needing medical attention or anything, but just, they were just worn out.
To me, sir, these are extremely new. Maybe not to everybody, but to me they are. So I don't know if you can answer this based on experience, but perhaps you can answer it based on a plan that I would hope you would have in place. What happens to the facility, to the building, if you go out of business? Does it just sit there and rot down, or what happens?
That could be a part of the plan. If we could have a requirement to remove the course, as part of a stipulation. But that's a very valid question, and there's not a plan requiring removal of it for any reason. However, if that was proposed, we would certainly accept it. I mean, we're the ones building it, and we could definitely have that as a requirement to take it down.
But to your knowledge,
to my knowledge, no.
None of these have ever gone out of business and been done anything with one way or the other?
To my knowledge, no. I've never seen one that's gone out of business. Doesn't mean, I'm sure there are ones that have. I'm just not aware of ones that have.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions for the applicant? The existing trees on the perimeter, I heard you say you plan on keeping those. They're about 20, 25 feet tall.
There's a variety of species, some of them native. Some things like wax myrtles, that are shrubby that will grow. They're maybe currently in the 5 feet will grow. And then there's several species, I don't know the exact names of trees. And I would say, yeah, anywhere from the 10 to 25 feet range, there are trees in that area, in the exact building, lease location. And we would preserve as much of that as possible, definitely on the perimeter, and also as much as possible in the interior of the course. We have to just, see, there will be obviously the infiltration when we come in there to build, but we do what we do. We were used to working in sensitive natural environments. Actually, this photo here, black and white, that's the Green River Gorge in Saluda, and I mean that was a virgin forest that we came in there and put long zip lines through with that specific goal of preservation of that natural area. So we're used to working in that and doing that.
It does add a lot. The more natural the environment,
it does.
It adds to the experience.
It does. And the one in Nags Head is unique, being out in the open. If you go there, the marsh has rebounded, and I think actually has done better because of the structure, because it's a little bit of a wind block, and so much of the shrubs are growing up larger than before we came. And so it's neat because it looks like it's actually growing out of the marsh. But it is definitely kind of sticks out there because there are no trees in that area. I think over time there will be some. So we were actually looking forward to hopefully having that area with the trees and propagating those, especially if we took out the competition below it from the weeds and things. And hope over time that would hopefully really shield it and integrate it into that environment.
Other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. All right, I'll open the public hearing. Who swore in? Okay. Miss.
Okay, again, my name is Beth Lutton, and I own a home at 1251 Lakeside Court. And I'm here representing the board of the Villages of Ocean Hill and the homeowners who are opposed to this structure. You've already passed the text amendment, so some of what I'm going to say kind of overlaps, but please bear with me. The Board of Directors of the Villages at Ocean Hill is providing a position statement on behalf of the owners who oppose the proposed text amendment and the construction of a 60-foot-high Wild Ropes Adventure Park within the commercial area of the VOH PUD. The Villages at Ocean Hill is a pristine beach community located at the end of Route 12, just before the entrance to the four-wheel drive area. It attracts both year-round residents and vacationers because of its wide beaches, natural surroundings, and proximity to the historic Corolla Village and Currituck Lighthouse. Many of its homes have lighthouse views that serve as both a selling point and rental attraction. Currituck County's height restrictions have helped to preserve the northern beaches in a more natural state that contributes to the value of the homes and the property taxes they generate. Within the last few years, the county enforced its height restrictions by requiring a miniature golf course in the commercial area of Timbuktu to remove the top portion of the lighthouse replica that exceeded the county's height restrictions for that special use permit. To grant this text amendment and permit the construction of the for-profit Wild Ropes Adventure Park within the commercial area of a residential community would set a new precedent, which heretofore the county opposed. It opens the door to other for-profit enterprises to seek approval to build structures exceeding the existing county height restrictions and forever change the landscape of the villages at Ocean Hill. The commercial area within the PUD of the VOH is located on the west side of the community, where there are many live oaks and pine trees. A 60-foot tower surrounded by 15 60-foot telephone poles could tower above most of the trees and compromise the unobstructed view of the lighthouse for many of the homeowners. One of the unique features of the VOH is that there are no telephone poles and all utility lines are underground. This is in contrast to Nag's Head, where telephone poles and utility lines are very visible and above ground. The Wild Ropes Adventure Park in Nag's Head is located in a commercial area behind a Dairy Queen and next to a restaurant and miniature golf course. There are no residential homes adjacent to it or anywhere near the park. The Board of Directors of the VOH believe that the construction of the park within the commercial area of the PUD would not be in harmony with the surrounding community. We would ask that if you are going to grant the text amendment and the construction of the Wild Ropes Adventure Park, that it be situated in an area where it is surrounded by other commercial establishments and away from a residential area. Respectfully submitted by the Board of Directors.
Thank you.
I don't know, have you all seen the one in Nag's Head? It's, yeah, I'm sure it is very challenging, very interesting, and I think it's a matter of location. There's also an issue that this is leased land, and that is of concern. What is the, you asked the question, what if it fails? My understanding that this is going to be open 5 months a year, so it could be a risky, financial venture for someone. But clearly, I have pictures here of taken from different angles within the community that I'd like to pass around, which shows you, the view of the lighthouse for the community, which is very special to it, And again, I can see why people would be attracted to this. It's a matter of where you put it. I said earlier when I spoke that there are like 24 states have these. I did a little research. And many of them are in state parks. This gentleman mentioned building one in some forest. There are, I think, better locations than right next to homes in a residential community. I know a number of our members have submitted letters, to the board. I sent one myself. I also have several others here that I would like to submit of people who sent them to our management company, expressing their concern, and some of them may be repetitive, I don't know.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Slutton? All right. I don't, did you swear in?
I just.
Okay, okay. So I think you were the only one that swore in besides staff and, okay. All right, well, you've got some time if you'd like to tell us anything else.
No, but I would, there are other community members here who I think would like to express their feelings. One in particular stood up before because her home is going to be right behind her house, you know, and
If they would like to speak, they'll have to swear in, and they can use what
Yeah.
time is left.
Can I speak again?
If you'll swear in, who else is going to speak? Because this will be the last time we do this. Okay. Left hand on the Bible. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right.
You go first, ladies.
Name and address for the record.
Mary Waslenko, 1204 Winddance Lane in Corolla. I'm opposed to this project because, like Beth said, it's totally doesn't belong in the area. Quite honestly, I drove down to the one in Nags Head. It is magnificent because it's out in the middle of nowhere. And when you're on it, all you see is big, beautiful sound, and it is lovely. You're not going to have that same thing where you're trying to locate it now, because all really you're going to see are a bunch of trees and some rooftops. But from the ground, you're going to see much, much more. And so we're concerned about the increased traffic on Route 12 because it's only a 2-lane highway as it is. We're concerned about the impact on, I guess having extra visitors in the area. You know, the local restaurants will be fine. That'll be great, and I'm sure maybe some of the tenants will love it. But we're concerned about, especially from my perspective, on some of those pictures I think Beth took from my house. So concerned about property values. So please consider the homeowners and the taxpayers in your decisions. And if you want to do this project, try and find another location where it would really benefit everybody. Thank you.
If you had to estimate, how far would you say it is from your house?
It's 200 feet. Thank you.
I have a question first on the site plan that's up here on the screen. You mentioned that it's a foot for every foot height-wise after 35 feet, which was standard height, so which would put it a 60-foot setback. All right, looking at the site plan here, where's the setback? Where would a 60-foot setback be? All the way around that project?
Just from the main building, or the tall building, right?
It's for the structures that are greater than 35 feet.
Just the visitor center and not the aerial?
No, the aerial adventure park.
I'm sorry.
Just the area.
Well, you have a visitor center, you have the parking lot, you have the visitor center, and then you have the main tower, and then you have all the telephone poles going off from that. So where would the 60-foot setback be in relationship to the telephone poles? And the reason why I ask, if you could back up on another slide to show what it looks like at nighttime when the sun is setting.
That was the
That was on his presentation.
All right, that's what we have seen. We've seen that picture. But if you look at the picture in Nag's Head with the sun setting,
Yep, that's the one.
that's a building. That's not telephone poles. When you look at all of the fixtures that are attached to those guide wires, all right, you're looking at almost one solid facility. It's not a separate tower. So, are you going to apply a 60-foot setback around the outside of the last telephone pole around?
If I'm not mistaken, it's from each 60-foot tower or pole, there's a 60-foot setback. Am I correct?
To the right
That's
and
correct.
to the right and left.
And the conceptual plan shows the 60-foot setback.
Right.
I'm sorry.
It's actually 60 feet on the conceptual plan from property lines. Those poles and the middle tower are all 60 feet.
Right.
Is that correct, Brett?
Correct. Each one of those lines that comes.
Yeah, the dotted line on the outside, so you're looking where where your arrow is right now, up there in the corner. Well, you're talking about from there out to the dotted line is gonna be 60 feet.
According to, the plan,
From the structure to the property line?
to the property line.
The structure meaning those telephone poles.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
You know, guys, if you look at the sunset down in Nag's Head on that structure, it looks like a building. And that's what we're gonna see in our neighborhood. That thing does not need to be next to VOH. The lady's 200 feet, so I'm on the environmental committee and the board, and I go out all the time looking at the community where those houses are located. You could spit at that project. That's how close it's gonna be. And the trees are not that high. And then I asked the question about this. If you look at the dotted line to the right of it, Freeman owns all that. Now, you know the term, you know the man Freeman, all right? He must be a legend in Currituck, all right? What happens when he develops that and cuts all those trees down? Huh? There goes your buffer. We won't have a buffer. And I'll guarantee you, once this Wild Ropes goes up, Freeman's going to develop the rest of that property. And that whole thing is going to be opened up because he's not going to leave a tree standing. And you know Freeman. All right, that's all I have to say. Have a nice night.
Thank you. Okay. Everyone who has been sworn in has spoken, so I close the public hearing and discussion among the board. I guess one thing I want to ask and clarify in my own mind and for the sake of the board in general, the site plan is drawn on, is currently zoned general business, is that correct?
That's correct. It's zone PUD with commercial allocation, GB.
Okay. PUD with commercial allocation, zone general business.
Mm-hmm.
So can you please just list me a few of the potential uses of this property? Because I think part of what we need to wrap our minds around is that this property is zoned for commercial use.
In the summary use table, in Chapter 4 of the ordinance, uses that are allowed include restaurant, professional service, parking lot, parking structure, athletic facility, amphitheater, stadium, arena, outdoor recreation, bar, nightclub, or cocktail lounge, convenience store, drugstore, pharmacy, entertainment establishment, financial institution, grocery store,
Okay. I think we get the,
shopping center.
okay. Go ahead.
Finished?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, in considering that, you know, sitting on this board, a lot of times what we hear is, how would you feel if this was in your backyard? You know, and we do. We think about that. We take all public concerns very serious. We look at the pros and cons of any project that's proposed to us. And knowing that this is a commercially, already, you know, this isn't a rezoning. This is already zoned for commercial. And me, if I'm looking at poles and ropes that I can see through, as opposed to a potential restaurant or bank or, you know, any of these other type of uses that are already permitted, I mean, we can't look at it like, let's make this stay wooded forever. It's going to be developed. It's going to be something. So what we're looking at here is a permitted use. So anyway, I'm just thinking through that we can't look at this as a rezoning. This is not a rezoning. This is already a zone general business. It's got a commercial allocation. So I wanted to address that because a lot of what we've heard is, you know, this isn't a use that needs to be near houses and things like that, but it is already zone general business. There's going to be something non-house there.
Right. May I please speak? Okay, it is general business.
I
You're
have-
not going to have a restaurant that's
Ma'am,
60
I've
feet
closed,
in the air.
please, I've closed the public hearing. I've closed the public hearing. I understand the height of the tower is different than what a restaurant or a other type of commercial uses might be. But it's also, it allows trees to grow. It allows, there's not going to be nighttime operation. There's not going to be nighttime light pollution. There's not going to be substantial noise pollution as far as motors and things like that. But anyway, discussion among the board.
I had a question. Was any way this commercial area a result of the subdivision of Villages at Ocean Hill? Was it carved out of the same parcel when it was done? So all the homes in Villages at Ocean Hill, when they bought it, they knew that there was a commercial aspect to it. Is that correct? Am I correct in assuming that?
Whether they knew or not.
It existed anyway.
Well, it was
I
part- it was
can't
part
speak
of-
to what they knew at when they purchased their property, but
I'm saying, but
and there
when-
were
from the
changes.
beginning, it was carved out as a commercial, or no?
I'm not sure from the very beginning if they actually allocated this land for business activities or not, or if it occurred after the initial plan was approved. There could have been a change proposed after the initial master plan was approved.
And the reality of it is, anytime there's a subdivision that is a planned unit development, there's generally the commercial aspect within that subdivision.
That's correct. With the ones on the Outer Banks.
My concern here is the height is certainly comparable to a 35-foot commercial building. Now, you're absolutely right about that the commercial building can be open till midnight, like at the Harris Teeter, and you can have big parking pole lights all the way around. That's going to be very obnoxious to the neighbors there. Who it's going to draw is going to make an effect. It's a very big concern, and I represent the beach, and I think that far more than just these immediate neighbors would be, whoa, what's that? Because it's going to be so much higher than all of the houses. And of course, you get the same problem when you build a 24-bedroom house that's under 35 feet height, and all of a sudden, you've got a neighbor with one house over here, and you've got this huge building, which is now occurring in the off-road area. As y'all well know, the 24-bedroom house that is now going in with a very small house on one side of it and a large house, but certainly not 15,000 square feet house that's going in there now. And I see that being the potential issue here is, okay, we're going to put this here, then how much more are we going to keep putting commercial up there in a very limited access location?
Well, and that was one thing that was kind of going through my mind as well, but this is already zoned. There's going to be something commercial there, whether it be this or something else. It's there, that
And that's what its purpose is.
commercially zoned property is there.
Well, it's almost like, and this might seem a stretch to you people who live there, but it almost seems that this project would be protecting you against things like a bar, a cocktail lounge that could be open all hours of the night and day with music and noise and traffic and drunks and, you name it. And I'm not saying that you like this, but I think I would, if I lived there, that I'd like this better than I would a cocktail lounge, which could possibly go there. Or
But if you-
anything could go there, commercial, at this point.
If you approve this as an outdoor adventure, and let's say for some reason the rope poles and so forth, the athletic part of this doesn't really float, what's going to prevent the next person that leases this land from putting up a water slide? that's 60 foot in the air.
That's still a
The use
permissible
permit.
use.
They
And,
could,
you know, we
they'd go
can't-
through this.
But if it's already granted as a use permit for Adventure Park, what's the difference?
They'd still have to come before you
Yeah, they still, yeah.
to do something different.
You'd still
correct?
have a different use permit.
Yeah, and although that's a permissible use, they still have to get the permit, use
Yeah.
permit.
They'd still have to come before you for a modification of the use permit, or depending on what level of change they were proposing.
Right.
You know, we seem to be getting, and I was guilty of it myself, what if kind of things. And we can't do but so much what ifs because we just don't know.
I think that this in its nature, specifically at the beach, is probably well equipped for the beach. Simple reason being, it's targeting most of the people that vacation here, and that's the biggest part of the beach. I'm sure a lot of the rentals, you know, with their excursions and everything else, would be a big part of that.
Well, and it's outdoors, recreational.
It promotes physical activity, which we don't have as much of anymore, I don't think.
That's true. That's true.
It's more of a green structure.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Has
mean, compared
lower
to a
amount of-
go-kart or something.
Yeah, lower amount of impact of the carbon footprint as well as environmental impacts with, instead of it being a 24-bedroom home there, if it were changed. Well, am I correct in saying that residential is a permissible use under general business? So the reality of it is someone could put a large home there. It could be a cellular tower. Am I correct that you can use general business for a cell tower?
Yes, that's correct. It's right there.
So it could be a cellular tower with multiple antennas
wait.
on it?
No.
No. I retract that then.
Well, and I don't want to overlook the obvious either. I mean, does anything about this proposed project not meet the rules?
For when you say the rules, I mean, there's still a major site plan approval that's going to be required. So from the conceptual plan and the fact that you recommend an approval of the text amendment, then no.
Right. Yeah, and the text amendment, that's a countywide thing that we've talked about. But I mean, I just don't want to overlook that, is what's being proposed. We know there's other steps to go through as far as site plan requirements. But as far as the concept, what we're seeing, is there anything that doesn't meet what's required in the UDO at this point?
Not to my knowledge. No.
Any other discussion among the board?
Just a quick question. I should probably know the answer to this. The text amendment that we approved still has to be approved by the commissioners?
Correct.
Thank you.
I would say that the majority of the folks that we've had contact with this evening and through emails have more of a concern about the visual impact of the structure and the building itself more so than the environmental impact, other than perhaps the removal of some of the scrubs and trees that are on the lot. It is absolutely a fact that some properties will be impacted by their ability to view certain areas that are south and west of those properties. There's no way to predict at this moment what the financial impact would be on those properties when it comes to market value of the properties. Many of those properties that have a view of this may not be severely impacted by their view of, let's say, the Currituck Beach Lighthouse or the marsh area that's to the west of this property. But in fact, it could be a positive thing like we talked about earlier tonight. People see this particular business there. It may cause them to actually visit this facility and enjoy that. I received just like you all did, multiple emails about this, and I tried to respond to every email to let them know that at least the planning board did receive them. And in my own professional opinion, at this time, you cannot really determine whether there would be a negative impact on the market value of any of the properties. It may affect the desirability of some of those properties for a potential buyer who may be looking to purchase a home that has a partially obstructed or an obstructed view of certain visual things that exist already. And if you look at some of these folks that sent us emails, some of them are approximately 0.2 of a mile away from the proposed business here. And the lighthouse, the Currituck Beach Lighthouse, is approximately 0.8 of a mile from some of those folks that we received emails from. Most of these folks that we received emails from are north of this particular property. So this property, depending on where its location is physically on the lot, may impact their view a little more than if it were to say pushed farther westward, like the conceptual drawing shows. It shows it being pushed forward farther to the west than, let's say, being closer towards the east. If it were closer to the east, it would impact those properties greater because there are already trees that exist along that northern line on the western end near the top there, and also on the northern line at the eastern corner there, there's trees there. So there's already obstacles there of a perfect sight line to some of those objects at ground level. But as you get on top of your decks on your home, you're more likely to see this structure because you're going to be elevated at the same height above some of those trees that already exist now. And you look at the Currituck Beach House, the Currituck Beach Lighthouse, its height is 162 feet. This is 60 feet, and from some of these properties, it will not look extensively tall because of the depth perception you get when you're looking at that farther away object. But some of the ones that are closer, the properties that are on the other side of Highway 12, to the east side of Highway 12, when they look westward towards this, they'll be able to see more of a block view because they're at that level almost directly in front of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and even at 60 feet tall, by the nature of the type of structure, you can see through it better than you could a solid wall,
Absolutely.
which could potentially be 40 feet
Right.
high. You know, although the height
Right.
limit's 35, that's the mean roof height, which to the ridge could easily be 40.
Some of those folks that have written us emails and spoken tonight, they may not have a 100% obscured view, but maybe their view will be partially impacted. Some others may have more of an impact. It all depends on how close they are to it.
Mm-hmm.
The closer you are to it, there's going to be more impact.
Right.
But you're absolutely right. If this were a 2.5-story structure, the height of the roof could be 42 or 43 feet, even with the 35-foot guideline that we have. So there would be obstruction, complete obstruction,
Mm-hmm.
whereas this particular property, you can see through it.
All right. Other discussion, questions? All right. I'll call for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve, as long as the applicant satisfactorily meets the TRC comments and the condition that the text amendment is approved.
All right. We have a motion. I'll second. We have a motion and a second. All in, ma'am?
Before you ask for approval, may I be allowed to add an addendum to your motion?
What do you want it to be?
That somewhere in this plan, or their presentation, or whatever you want to call it, they make a specific plan to do something with structure if they go out of business.
Removal
Can we
of all-
stop, we gotta stop the motion before we go, right?
No, there can be discussion.
It's up.
Yeah.
I concur with her. I agree. That's fine.
Okay, we'll go back. All right.
I have a comment before we have him actually change it.
Okay.
Yeah, I do too.
All right, withdraw your motion. Or you don't have to, but that would be the proper way. If it's up to you if they talk.
Well, just let them talk, and I'll add this in.
Okay, make a comment.
Okay, my comment is this. If the applicant installs this facility there and they go bankrupt, for instance, we cannot or should not impose the right to have them remove that, because if this is attached to the land permanently, like it will be, this is an object that would sell along with the land. Even though one business may not prosper, that does not mean that a second business would prosper. And
Yeah, it becomes real estate, doesn't it? Once
absolutely.
It's real, yeah.
it'd be like making somebody move
That's
their
just
house
like
if
if,
they.
let's say if Harris Teeter or something went out of business, or a Kmart or a Walmart, you don't ask them to tear down the building just because the business failed.
Now, the other side of that, we brought this up with the arrays, and we were told that we could not do that.
On the
If I
solar panels.
If I recall, yeah.
Well, and it was the value of the materials themselves made it highly unlikely somebody would just leave it there.
So I thought we were told that we could not force them to do that. Maybe I'm
Mary say,
mistaken.
I thought that was part of it.
I think the commissioners did approve them to remove it.
Did they? Okay, okay.
You made a comment about possibly doing that. Do you have any objections to it before I add it to it? Okay, so done.
Okay.
Do you want me to reread it then?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Okay.
That way, because we'll be starting over with a new second now.
All right, I'll reread this. Make the motion to approve with remaining TRC comments. So, making sure that the text amendment does pass, the condition that it passes, and the condition that if it goes out of business, to remove the structures, the poles, the tall poles, the buildings and all. Not the buildings, just the poles, right?
It would be the tower and the poles.
Because I mean, the office, I think that's a little bit much, just the poles.
Tower and poles.
Does that satisfy you too?
Yes.
Okay.
Is
They
that,
might as well add the approval of the major site plan to it. I'm done.
okay, approval of major solar. All right, and I'll second. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
No.
Okay, we gotta go hand. All right, all in favor, say aye and raise a hand. All right,
You're gonna have to put your hand down.
aye?
Remember the ties? You ran into this before, when it's 8 people?
Proper procedure, you know.
He can vote.
Yeah,
he
I can
can
vote.
vote.
I can vote.
That was a tiebreaker.
It's just if there's a tie, then it is denied.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor, aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then opposed, nay. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
All right, so it is a tie, and read us.
I'll read what it says. If the motion was to approve the request receives a tied vote, then the motion fails as it did not receive the majority of the votes. And the request is denied. So this motion, even though you
It was a
made
motion to
it
approve, but
approve it,
tied,
because it
so it's
did not
denied.
get the majority, it will move forward to the Board of Commissioners as a denial.
Okay. All right, so that motion is denied based on a tie vote. Okay, and then we move on, correct?
Yes.
The next,
I was just gonna say, they're tentatively scheduled to go to the Board of Commissioners on February the 1st.
February 1st is when this case goes to the Board of Commissioners, February the 1st. That's tentative, but February 1st, it goes to Board of Commissioners.
I'm just trying to understand, so this goes to the Board of Commissioners and then they get to rule on it.
That's right. They make the final word. We are a technical review committee, so our recommendation will go to them as a denial based on the tie that you just witnessed. That recommendation will go on to the Board of Commissioners, and then they are the final word. They take everything we talked about tonight into consideration, what the UDO says into consideration, as well as presentation from the applicant, whoever else is here. And they'll vote on it, same as we did tonight.
And their award starts at 5 o'clock. It's at 5 o'clock, but adjoining property owner notifications will go out and a public notice sign will be posted on the property.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all for your time and your input. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir. That's how government's supposed to work. Everybody says their piece, and then we try to figure it out.
You all make the big bucks, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Huge.
It doesn't pay the gas to go back to the Outer Banks.
And motion for a 5-minute recess.
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, 5 minutes. Yes, ma'am.
I used to cover planning boards when I worked for the newspaper report. Do you have a chance to go out to the public meeting, the Outer Banks, to see these little lots and where is the street? This goes through at 60 roller coaster and water slide.
Is he zoned for that?
He's still got to go before the board. It's still got to be.
Within the GB.
The use permit's got to.
Single family Outer Banks. He's this the piece you're talking about?
The commercially, we knew it was commercially zoned, that he still has.
The property is around the SFO, but it is GB.
Yeah. And
It's already zoned for general business.
Oh, you're talking about this piece over here, the zone GB.
Well, this is good to see where it is located, because none of us had any idea.
See, this is GB, this is saying SFO, which is single family Outer Banks.
That's on the other side.
Houses
Yeah.
down here.
This is undeveloped four houses, so there will be houses here.
Here, that is correct.
Yeah.
There's some GB zoned over here. This is commercial uses.
I mean, pretty much the majority of the property, this direction is GB because that's close to Winks and all that down here.
Here's where the wastewater facility is.
So you know this area?
A little bit, yep.
Yeah. I mean, my kids are pregnant. It's just.
They should just had to leave the door open.
Well, I sympathize with that. Yeah, I sympathize to a point to where, is it that or a CVS?
Right.
Which would you rather see? Be careful not to shoot yourself in the foot, because if this gets
Well, the
turned out.
nightclub isn't open all year, and I think they need that for their
I'm thinking
cash
this
flow.
thing were 35 feet.
They never
wouldn't be
are.
near Falcons.
Well, if it was 35, you wouldn't need the text amendment.
If it was 35, they wouldn't do it.
Bumping
Then there'd be
into
another
it.
business that-
Right.
But it's
that you
reassuring
couldn't see
to know that
through.
it's back.
My thing is all red and it's.
Thank you for.
Yep, have a safe drive home.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I need to get up for a cramp.
You just used up 4 of them. Hey, you just
John,
used
you
up
better
4.
get another bottle of water.
I agree.
I'm gonna get a reputation freebie. I hadn't even seen that.
So it's only if it's a 4-4 tie.
It's not that I'm totally.
Or 3-3,
opposed
I'm
to
sorry,
vote,
3-3.
But he is doing anything and everything he can to just exploit every piece of property he has anywhere.
That's the
I'm
reason.
very well aware of that, what he does in Moyock.
Well, that's exactly. The shopping center in, is it?
But when you have an
Where
easy
Burger King and all that stuff is?
He may have at one time.
It's live.
deal with the tie rate is.
But see
no matter
here,
who all
see,
votes,
this is what concerns me on this piece of property.
board like
Is, he gets, this company to put forth and get the zoning, the conditional zoning.
And then he does the rest.
Well, and then he's gonna,
'Cause he's the owner. He's the owner.
he's the owner, so he's leasing it to them.
Right.
So their lease is
Like
gonna
this,
go
I'm
up
the
proportionally
president of our board.
to their success. And if they are successful, he's gonna skyrocket their profit and then, I mean, they're only got limited hours of 7 or 8 hours a day, even in the peak of the summer to operate.
And they're not gonna do any business in the winter.
Huh?
They're not gonna do any business in the winter.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, and then it's
Well,
even
did I hear
5 or
somebody
6
say they were
hours.
just supposed to be open 5 months a year? Did I hear that
Yeah, I
somewhere?
heard somebody say that,
It counts as a no.
but, that's,
If you
I
don't
mean,
say,
and
if you don't
it's
say
just like-
anything, it counts as
I
a
mean,
yes.
I'm not totally
Yeah.
opposed
Yeah.
to him.
What if I say
coming in
abstain from
within
voting?
the
Counts as a yes.
and so forth like that, but under scheming and underhanded, I understand that the.
You're on here to
I
vote,
haven't
you might
read
as
it
well
yet.
vote.
I understand
Because when you don't, you still vote.
I mean, and I'll tell you honestly, the only reason I voted yes,
Upheld the county
it's his land.
in
mean-
saying, hey, you pulled this little fast.
Would I want it in my backyard? Hell no.
How many of these people that were complaining about the height, do you think would complain also if a house is being built right next to them?
I think they would really scream out loud and clear if a 24-bedroom house is being built next to
But I
something.
mean, that's my point, is if they're complaining just because they don't want anybody to do anything to obstruct the review, that's kind of.
Right.
If I,
Well,
if
it's not a
I,
question of just obstructing
if
their
I walk
view.
away
It's
from
a
my
question
property,
of
it's a
what it is.
foreclosure.
I
Is
mean,
it
I
a
don't.
question of I'm here,
I
don't want
take
nobody
up
else here?
Well,
a 10 by 10
there's-
shed that I had in the
there's
I
some
mean,
of
we
backyard.
do
that
that
over
every
there.
time.
It's not
I mean, that's- I don't want
this in
anchored
my
in.
yard.
I can do that.
Exactly. I don't want this.
Well,
I
But
don't
I'm
want
not,
this
I
apartment
can't take up
complex in the back of my
something that's got
neighborhood.
footers
You know,
and,
I'm
You
on
know.
an acre of land, but that's not enough. I don't want.
Well, my thing was,
Right,
that's
that's
about
what I mean,
the,
you
can do anything you want. The subdivision having that commercial.
Because it's still
If
your
you're in a
property.
subdivision that has a commercial area, you should expect things to go there. I mean, that was my reason behind it. Did you vote, you voted against it? What was your big thing with it, out of curiosity? Right, well, I realize it, but what? You don't like any of the height at all?
Thank you very much.
Good timing as usual.
get off.
Sorry, what?
Okay.
It doesn't fit in with that.
All right, we'll call the meeting back into order. And our next and final agenda item under new business is PB 1524, Charles Jarvis, request to amend the Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 4, use standards to allow manufactured home and prefabricated building sales in the general business GB zoning district. Ms. Donna?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you mentioned, Mr. Jarvis is here tonight with an application for a text amendment that would allow, in his case, prefabricated building sales in the general business zoning district, which happens to be categorized with the manufactured homes. Just to give you some background as to why Mr. Jarvis is here tonight and what he is proposing or doing on the property. Back in October, there was a notice of violation sent to Mr. Jarvis, or the property owner in which he leases or uses the land. He had started an operation where he's selling prefabricated sheds on a piece of property in Lower Currituck. Notice of violation was sent to him. Once it was viewed that the use is not allowed in that zoning district, of course, he's given the options to mitigate the violation. The first option would be to remove the use. Probably not the most viable option for him at this point in time, since he already has the buildings on the property. Another option would be to rezone. Probably not the best idea either, because this particular use is only allowed in industrial zoning districts because it is classified as an industrial type use, primarily because of the visual impacts that these types of operations have. It's more of a display, a larger display, and of items that are for sale on property, and it's not associated generally with an interior sales operation like some of the operations are along the highway, where you have an interior retail store, but you may display some of the items outside. This is a much larger scale. And the other option he was given was for a text amendment, which is why he's here. He selected the text amendment process because it probably is the easiest one to do at this point in time. Going back again with some more background as to why is this particular use in the industrial use category. Like I mentioned, it's probably due to the visual impacts that these types of uses have. They are more in tune with operations that are not typically what you want to see along the highway, although he does have it is a retail operation per se. those types of large display areas generally need to be screened or landscaped heavily. And that all came down from the land use plan as policy statements and goals and objectives. And that was brought forward through our UDO, as many of y'all were probably part of that process or came on board shortly after it was approved. The adoption of the Unified Development Ordinance back in 2013 really took into account the land use plan and evaluated all the uses. And the whole goal of that evaluation was to eliminate the need for use permits and make uses more permitted by right or with a zoning permit with specific criteria related to those uses and categorize them into the right zoning district. So now what we have is fewer zoning use permits that require board approval and placing those uses that have more of a negative impact, whether it be visual or whatever, in particular zoning districts that would accept those, like the industrial zoning district, which happens to be where he's at. With this request, as it is presented to the board, it's just to flat out allow this in a general business zoning district. Staff is recommending denial of this request that's being submitted because this particular request is not consistent with the goals and objectives and policies of the land use plan and does not improve the appearance of the community or the highway. And the proposed use does not provide any additional development standards proposed for this use in the general business zoning district and does not result in a logical and orderly development pattern since it has the potential to introduce some industrial uses in activities in the general business zoning district. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for staff? Okay, I'll ask the applicant to come up, name and address, and present your case, please.
Charles Jarvis, 1211 Toxie Road, Elizabeth City. I'm going to be brief since it doesn't look too promising for me, but I did want to address a few points. In this staff report, it says, and she addressed this earlier, the Unified Development Ordinance classifies manufactured home and prefabricated building sales as an industrial use classification within the industrial services use category. I'm not sure how that relates to portable building sales. To me, industrial would be manufacturing or something heavy and noisy. This is not that. Otherwise, I just have a few other things I want to say. I believe it's really not fair to not allow this. There are already some on the 168 and 158 corridor. The business itself is enhanced by drive-by customers. So if I had to go to an industrial park, it would be quite a disadvantage to me. There are just so many similar businesses. There's RV sales. I mean, there's I'm not sure how much different they are. These used car lots, there's golf carts. As far as where I am and what I'm doing, I actually believe it does enhance the community appearance. If you saw what was there before, I'm sure you did, there where Sonny's used to be, you know what it looked like. There's a lot of current vacant lots up and down the highway that would benefit, that could be rented or sold, so more businesses could open it up. This country was built on small business. That's really all I got to say.
Any questions for the applicant, Mr. Jarvis?
Can you define for me a little better where you are on highway?
It's 7458 Currituck Highway.
Tell me what's around it that I can recognize.
Newburn's Farm Market. It's on the same property as Newburn's Farm Market.
You're pretty close
the
to
right.
Tobacco Farm, right?
It's about a quarter mile on the right before you get there.
It's the old North River restaurant.
Huh?
The old North River restaurant.
So you're up closer in the Moyoc?
No, ma'am.
No.
Howell's
the other way.
Point.
Howell's Point, okay.
Jarvisburg.
Cotton Gin.
Across the street from the
Okay.
daycare.
That's right.
Yeah, that's
Where
right.
where the rose tree is?
South, further south.
Further south than that, okay.
There's a daycare.
It's a
Right
daycare
across the
facility
street
across the
from it.
street.
What's the landscaping business across
Yeah,
the
for the
street?
new
Seas-
church, yeah.
Oh, well, it used to be Box, but
Yeah, do you know where Box Nursery was located?
It's not
Huh?
Box Nursery?
Yeah.
It's southern.
No, but
southern
I got a
escapes.
general idea where it is.
Yeah.
Where all the big swimming
Buster
pools are.
Newbern Road?
Oh, I know where
River
that
Lane
is.
And you had
Road?
to pass
It's called
by when you
Southern
go home.
Escapes, I believe is what
Southern
it's called now.
Scapes,
right.
okay, that's
That's
it,
right.
yeah.
Okay. Any other
Be a
questions?
restaurant.
Yeah.
Do you make anything on site, or are they just stored on site?
they're just displayed. That's it.
Hey, how many units are out there now? Do you know offhand?
I think there's about 18.
And how do you conduct? I mean, if somebody comes in and says, "I want to buy," I mean, are you there on site yourself?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
I sell the building. Graceland either pulls one off the lot, or they order. It takes about a month, and they deliver it. So
are you
I
based-
just sell them. I don't
You're
do
a
any-
dealer. Is that basically how that?
Yes.
Okay.
So basically, the ones out there of different sizes and shapes for people to see what you have to offer.
That's right. I mean, there's all kinds of styles, and I've been across the state, and there's a lot of them. A lot of dealers like myself own major corridors. I don't understand the difference. Why Currituck doesn't like them.
Years ago, there was a lot of mobile home type sales, and they started popping up everywhere. And really, it got really unsightly, and you ended up with half of the unit sitting there on the road with the plastic covering it up, and it'd sit there long enough the plastic would blow off, and then you're just looking inside the thing, it's getting rained in. And that was up and down the highway. So the Board of Commissioners at the time, the direction was to reduce that, beautify the corridor. And a part of that is what's caused this situation. But I would think that maybe you could work with staff in some way to make this a different use that's not directly associated with mobile homes, because we don't want to make a decision that opens up what we had before.
I understand that, but I feel like it was kind of written with a broad brush.
And that's what I'm agreeing with you. That's why I think if we could work with staff to maybe, and you're going to have to do part two, where this is more of a retail operation, maybe with a few outdoor units displayed. It's going to be how it's worded, to where it doesn't open up things that the county doesn't want to see, but also allows for some reasonable. Because I really look at what you're doing more as like people selling gazebos and outdoor furniture, these portable sheds. I think that's kind of the same vein, but it's got to be set up somehow in a legal retail type setting. Different than what we had before, where there was, half of mobile homes up and down the side of the road everywhere.
Well, I understand that. Yeah, absolutely.
And it is a broad brush. And now, as people like you and other people come up, we can start, pinpointing different type of community needs, different business uses, and you could work with staff on that, which, staff would be very happy to help you with that. And it would require, some of your effort as well. It's how it works. We're going to work together on it.
That's right.
Mr. Jarvis, do you have an office on the premises?
I do. It's one of the buildings.
One of the buildings that you're selling, or this?
Yes.
And what are the sizes of these prefabricated buildings?
Well, they go from 8 by 12 all the way up to 14 by 40.
14 by 40.
By
is a
40
trailer.
erected on the site?
There's one sitting there.
So somebody could live in
I'm
that.
sorry, there's not. I'm sorry. They go up to 14 by 40, but 14 by 28 is as big as I have. And really, that's really the biggest I can sell with the building permits as they are, because if you go over 400 square feet, county wants it on a foundation like a house, which really puts me out. I mean, it's not something that we could do.
Questions for staff?
Sure.
State line builders is up the road. If they were to go out of business, that place could he lease out without moving the operation, or would that fall under the grandfather clause?
It would depend on whether or not there was a use there's a couple of things with that. If there was a use permit issued for that particular property, then that use permit runs with the land. So it would not matter how long that business would close down, it would continue to run with the land. If you have a situation where there's no use permit tied to that particular property, and it's just a business that's selling sheds that was permitted back before this ordinance change, then there is a time frame in which you have to reestablish that business, or you lose the non-conforming status.
Yeah, 6 months.
Yep.
So based on what John was saying, is that something that you would be amenable to doing, is possibly sitting down with staff, maybe coming up with some maybe size restrictions, or I don't want to put words in the staff's mouth, but just working with them to maybe modify this application and represent, or is that?
Well, sure. I mean, I'm open to because I want to make it work.
Well, I think,
You're trying to make a business.
Right.
Make it work, so it'd be nice if everybody worked together.
yeah.
See if we could find a
Oh, we support business. There's several small business owners sitting right in front of you here. I mean, we're not going to say, no, go away. I mean, we want to try to figure out a way logically to where, it makes sense. And I'm sure it's going to involve buffers, and maybe to where you got to take people behind the buffer to show them some of the units that, where it's more of a retail type setup.
Well, I'm renting the property, so I mean, it's really, I don't mind doing some of that, but I don't know, I don't know how much I can do.
Sure, sure.
So I just have to look at it, see what will be required.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the smartest people in the room, as far as that goes, are right there, and they can talk to you about parking requirements, buffers, fences, that type of thing, to where it's something that might make sense. I mean, we can't write it tonight, we can't vote on it tonight, but just giving some direction, because we can't say, okay, what you're doing is fine, and then open it up to other unintended consequences.
Right. So I may not stay in that particular location if I was. I may go somewhere else that might be better, or, I mean, it's got a good visibility there, but I think, eventually that property probably will be better used for something else, somewhere down the line. I mean, I don't know when that'll be.
Well, the use you're doing now appears better than what was there before.
Well, right.
And nobody that comes here tells me that they look bad.
No, I'm building a house
on
River
Lane,
Lane,
they don't,
which is...
they're not ugly. I mean, I could see your point about the trailers and, mobile homes. That is kind of and there's one down the road that's not very attractive. So I understand you want to make improvements to the looks of the county.
Yeah.
But you got to strike a balance, I hope.
Yeah, I don't think what you've got out there looks bad, and I see it every day. I mean, we're building right on River Lane, which is the very road south of you.
Okay.
Road by it, kind of glance. I
I've
hadn't
been
thought a
back
whole
there.
lot
I walk
about
back
it.
there, try to get some exercise, and I've seen somebody's worked back there, building back there.
The real pretty one that looks like really good craftsmanship, that's the one we're doing. Okay. There's somebody else building another.
All right.
I don't know who's
You probably got a
building
little
that one.
sign out there or something, don't you?
I have a sign.
I have a question again about the zoning and so forth like that. If State Line wasn't grandfathered in, State Line Builders wasn't grandfathered in, would they be in the same predicament that he was, that they couldn't go into just a general business site?
I'm not sure I understand that question. Either they're grandfathered or they have a use permit. So they have to be one or the other if they're in operation.
Okay, but I mean, do you know if they are like in a general business area?
The one in Moyoc, I do know has a use permit for light manufacturing in a general business district.
Okay.
I'm not sure about the location in Grandy. I don't know if they have it. They may have a use permit there. I'm not totally
Because
sure.
I'm just wondering how those two businesses, or that one in particular, compares to what he has, other than the fact that his is more metal and they're more wood. Because I mean,
they're all wood for the most part. I don't think.
but I mean, his
I
aren't.
think they might sell some carports, but I think all of them are
They
pretty
do,
much.
they do.
Oh,
and,
is a wooden building?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what.
On the outside, I don't know that they'd really look much different.
No, they're comparable, at least at a glance. I've not
Yeah.
stopped and looked at any of them.
Well, if you're in construction, and if you stop and look at them, they're built very well. I mean, they double up on the studs every 4 feet. I'm gonna throw a sales pitch on you. But anyway, no, I'll stop. But anyway, they are very well built. Yeah,
Okay.
and they're proud. They're a good company. They stand behind their work. You know, obviously they want me to do well if I can.
Well, I'd recommend, work with staff, be receptive to their input, and just see what you guys can come up with. Because, right now, you're operating illegally. We can't say that that's okay. And we also don't want to, be rash and quick and vote on something that's got unintended consequences, like we just say, okay, put up a 6-foot fence and you're fine. It needs thought, it needs direction, and try to figure out a way that businesses like this can operate, because I don't think what you're doing there is anything like a mobile home dealership at all. I don't think it's industrial. It's how do we make what you're doing fall into a retail type category to where you are allowed some display units, and then maybe the rest of your inventory is screened some kind of way. You got to look at parking.
Or behind or something, have something out front, but maybe something behind.
Yeah. So work it out. See what you guys can come up with and come back to us if you're willing.
Oh, so, never mind.
Sir?
Nothing. So what am I, so y'all won't vote on this?
All right, any other discussion among, what were you going to say, Miss?
I was going to move that we table this until he has an opportunity to just.
Before we do,
discuss with
I'd like to
staff.
ask some clarity questions real quick to staff. What he mentioned with the RV and the car lots and all that, are they in general business?
I think some of them are. Let me look.
Well, where I'm going with this is, if he's
Vehic-
not actually
vehicles
building the buildings and
definitely
they're just
are.
sitting there, in y'all's opinion, would that be a potential to kick out of a light industrial?
I know like heavy equipment sales are light industrial. I can tell you real quick. Heavy equipment sales, rental, and service is industrial.
Right. That's due to the nature of the equipment.
Manufactured home and prefabricated building sales are light industrial.
What makes that light industrial though?
Most likely it's the visual impacts.
Just the
Moving it away from the highway corridor.
Yeah.
What was that definition again?
What definition?
Prefabricated, read that part again.
It's manufactured homes and prefabricated building sales.
Which is where this happens to fall right now.
Automobile sales is allowed in the general business.
RVs too, does that
Boat
follow RVs?
and marine sales is allowed in general business.
So maybe just a suggestion for a modification to this. Prefabricated buildings in excess of X.
Yeah, I think a square footage and a
Right.
size dimension
Right.
is certainly part of the equation.
Because that would still exclude the mobile homes and allow something like this.
Size of building is a part of it. How many, number of units on site is a part of it. There's a lot of, parts of this that you guys can get together on.
Do we have to move to table it, or can he withdraw the?
He can withdraw, we can table, we can deny this, and then come back with a new amendment. It's a lot of ways. And to be fair to you, we'll take your input too.
He would be better off to leave his application because he's under a notice of violation.
Got.
And if he withdraws that application, it could have an implication on that.
So if we table it, does that buy him a little time?
It probably makes most sense in his situation to do that.
That's the next meeting we'd
Table
have to pick it back
Unless
up.
he's opposed to that.
That's fine.
I mean, he
Yeah.
he could say, I want it to move forward as presented, and then you could choose to act on it however you'd like.
I think I better table it, and I think I have a
We
better
have to put a
chance.
time frame on a table, or
No, it comes back up at the next meeting.
automatically?
Yeah. I mean, I'd make that, probably the motion, and, whoever makes whatever motion, but have some time frame on it. But anyway, any other discussion, or?
A table automatically comes the next meeting.
Okay.
Right? The next meeting if it's
Yeah.
tabled?
I would make a motion that we table this.
Hold on.
Withdraw.
What I'd like to say is, I think the major issue is prefabricated building sales needs to be a category on its own instead of being lumped into manufactured homes. Because the way it's written now, you're in with manufactured homes, and obviously, I'd rather see his business sitting on the side of the road than, 7, 8 manufactured homes sitting on a lot.
And it's probably different than somebody's just having them sitting there and somebody's building and having them sitting
Right.
there.
So we go with the unintended consequences. He's said that, I'm not going to go any bigger than X. Well, the next guy, he wants to do the 48 footers. And we've taken that out of the text, and now he's legally allowed to do that. So rather than just saying take it out, give a size restriction. Just a suggestion.
There's probably a point, and he alluded to it
Oh, he said
briefly,
that.
there's a point to where, those type of buildings, in this area anyway, because of our wind code and the foundations we got to have, you at a certain point, you better just get somebody to build the thing from scratch. But these smaller buildings, they're a great buy for the size.
Oh, sure.
I mean, if somebody comes to me about building a 12 by 12, I say, go to somebody like you, because we can't even do it. My cost is far more than what you're selling those things for.
Yeah, they're very efficient.
Have a good niche market for folks that need a 12 by 12, 12 by 14 shed. Man, you can't beat the price.
And if in fact it's true that you have to have the foundation for 400 square feet, maybe that's the tipping point of
Sure.
size-wise.
Yeah.
Sure, and that would be logical
Anything
to where
under-
there's something that, is that what it is, Donna? Do you recall, is it 400 square feet to where?
There's a couple of things, like there's no dimension can exceed 12 feet. That requires, if it does, then it requires a building permit.
That's
Once
where
you
the
get
strap
to that
downs.
point, I'm not sure about foundation requirements, I'm sure they've told you what you.
I was told by other people.
Oh, not necessarily the inspections department?
Oh, well, somebody actually bought a building that was 14 by 32, and
I can find out, I'm not sure.
and it came back and excuse me. I think he was ready to get the permit, and then somebody came across somebody else's desk.
It'd be worth
They
a little
said-
time with Bill Noons, the chief building inspector. He's, real good guy. He's gonna educate you, ask him any questions you have. He's
Okay.
very, very helpful.
And we'll probably need to sit down with him anyway with the activity on the property because of what you can, when it gets down to it, what can you use for an office, handicapped accessibility, bathroom requirements, all of that comes into play too. So we probably need to have that conversation
Okay.
anyway. To find, maybe this isn't the best site, maybe there is another piece of property that makes more sense that already has
Those facilities.
those facilities
Mhm.
for you.
Ms. Oliver, if his business did not need an office and he had just structures sitting on the property with for sale signs on them and call a particular number, would that still have to apply to that particular property?
There's no office, I would not think it would.
That's another solution,
so I
if that's
could-
the truth.
I can't speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, if,
But it can
I
be
say
part of your
if that is
discussions,
true, yeah, if that is true.
It's a possibility.
Yeah,
Get
yeah.
an RV, make a mobile office.
What'd you say?
Let's get an RV, make a mobile office.
Yeah.
But if that's true, that's one more option there, that if you're not on site and you don't have to have restrooms and handicap parking and handicap accessibility.
If you have clients coming to the property, you may still need something, I
Yeah.
don't know, like if they're going in and out of some of the units, I'm not sure. I could find out. We'll have that conversation with the inspector.
Okay.
And pretty much what that means is you'll have to actually physically come up here
I understand.
and talk to folks and meet with them. You probably can't do a lot of that over the telephone.
We can pick a date that works good for you and that everyone's here.
Okay.
Because we want every business to come out and survive.
Try to work through all the issues and at least come up with something that
Okay.
addresses a lot of the concerns with the use.
And we appreciate your efforts to meet with them and meet with Bill and work through this, because it's the only way that really that what we do works. Because like you said, it's a broad brush until somebody comes up with an idea and give us and staff the opportunity to work through it. And the next guy 20 years from now that gets to open up one of those businesses, he'll be thankful that you put some time into it.
Right. Okay.
All right. Any other?
We have a motion.
Okay. Let me hear the motion.
Make a motion to table until next meeting.
Okay.
Second the motion.
Motion, second, and a third. All in favor, aye? Aye. And opposed? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can give me a call this week so we can set
Can I take a
something
motion?
up.
He has an announcement.
Oh, okay.
You have 1 minute.
Yeah, right. You're on the clock.
All right. Next item is announcements. I'm going to turn the table over to Stephen.
That's fine.
Okay.
I can just still work through everything. Have it prepared for the next week.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, I just wanted to make the announcement that yesterday we had our first meeting of the Land Use Plan Steering Committee. That is a group of individuals that were selected and volunteered for their place on the committee in order to help to develop and modify the existing land use plan for the next go-around that's coming up. There's a total of 13 members, and 8 of those members attended last night. And I'll just give you an idea of some of the folks that are on there. You have 4 people from the northern mainland, Troy Breathwaite, Peggy Lusk, we've seen her in numerous times, Sam Miller, David Palmer. He's the guy that used to run the Palmer Inn in Barco. And from the southern mainland, you had me, Warren Edis, with Quibel and Associates, Barry Lippman, John Wright, former planning board member, Jim Clark from Knott's Island, former planning board member, Kimberly Hoey, Elizabeth White, Edward Cornett, and Barbara Marzelli, all from the off-road and Corolla area. So you're going to have all these folks that are working to help to maybe clarify some of these things that we have problems with now. And with 3 people that were either currently on or previously on the planning board should help to bring some insight to the other people that were not on those boards. And we had a little short exercise last night of each area got into groups, and we all wrote down ideas what we thought were positive things that could happen to our particular areas, and then on another sheet all the negative obstacles that come from trying to do those things we put on the first list. And we found that in many of those areas a lot of those things were almost identical. Where the same problems exist, there's some different problems, let's say, in the Moyock Township versus Poplar Branch Township, but overall there were a lot of similarities between all the things that each area thinks they need and the problems that they have. So just wanted to alert you guys on that, and every time we have a meeting, I'll be glad to give you insight on the progress of how we're coming along. And also there's the intent to develop a website for the public, also Facebook page and other internet-based resources where people can go on and look at the things that we do at the meeting, also any of the paperwork, statistics, all the other stuff that's in there. All that stuff will be made available online for the public, and we'll be involving the public at different public meetings that will occur as we move forward. It won't probably happen in the summertime just because of trying to get people to come in here and there, but ultimately we'll have the public's input about what they feel the problems are and what we need to address in that land use plan.
Big project. Thank you for
You're welcome.
being involved.
Stephen, did you have Elizabeth White as a former planning board member too?
I didn't know she was. If she was, then I appreciate her service.
Several years ago.
Yeah. If she was, I appreciate her service and dedication. I didn't know that she was.
Yeah.
All right. Any other announcements? Still not pregnant?
Good God, let me slap you.
Okay. All right. Motion to adjourn before I get in trouble. Second. All right. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nobody. See you next time.
Already in trouble.